evening. Welcome to this June 17th regular meeting of the West Orange Board of Education. We have a jam-packed agenda tonight, and my understanding is that the air conditioning, which is theoretically on, turns off at midnight, and that can't be stopped. So, fellow board members, please help us by keeping this moving along whenever possible. With that, let's get to it. Mr. Calavano?
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please remain standing for a moment of silence for Chris Morgan. Thank you. All right, let's get going. May I have a motion for consideration of the closed and public meeting minutes of June 3rd?
So moved.
Second.
All right, Mr. Calavano?
Mrs. Merklinger?
Yes.
Mr. Robertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Trigg-Scales?
Yes.
Vice President Mordecai?
Yes.
President Alper?
Yes. Our student liaisons can't be with us tonight, so before we send it over for the superintendent report, I just want to give a quick update on the superintendent search. As you know, the board hired RPAT Solutions as our search consultants roughly 3 months ago. In March, we conducted stakeholder surveys and conducted sessions with staff and parents. After that, RPAT helped us field the advertisements for the position and did the initial screenings of the resumes and the initial candidate interviews. RPAT received, I believe it was 61 resumes and advanced 7 candidates to us for first round interviews, which we conducted about a month ago. We advanced 3 candidates to a second round, and a week later we identified, in that second round rather, a week later, where we identified the finalist. Background checks have been successfully completed, and that finalist is now the candidate the board has selected for the position. We still have some work to do, but we're currently anticipating beginning to make introductions to staff and then to the overall community during the upcoming weeks, with an eye towards mid-July as a potential start date for the new superintendent. So we'll keep you posted as those dates become known, and we have more information for you. And with that, Ms. DeMendis, you're up.
Great. We have 2 presentations this evening, a brief presentation by Stonegate, who conducted our security audit, and then to follow an update on the work of the ELA committee that will be presented by Elizabeth Veneziano. So if we would like to take our seats in the audience.
Good evening. My name is Errol Brudner. I'm from a company called Stonegate Associates. We've been working with the West Orange School District now for about 4 or 5 months, assessing the school's preparation for safety, all avenues of safety to make sure students and staff are safe, as well as your plans, your technology, and things that we could do better. Just to lend some credibility to what I'm going to tell you, we do hundreds of schools throughout New Jersey, as well as Pennsylvania, New York, and Connecticut. We do healthcare and major companies, and everybody from very small schools to Rutgers and Kean University. What I'm comfortable in telling you is that West Orange is far above the curve on most schools that we visit. And we have a good benchmark from the numbers I've just shown you. The relationship that you have with the West Orange police, the input that we saw, and we met with all your principals, we met with the custodians, we met with the school resource officers, we met with a number of teachers. They were all concerned and well informed about how to keep themselves and students safe. We found that was well above what we see in other schools. We found the relationship between Chief Abbott and Ebony and John to be outstanding. We met a number of times over some issues, and the police are very intimately involved with the safety of the school. Their response time is excellent, and they're very familiar with the school. We met with your students, and we found the students support an excellent climate that if they hear something, they would tell somebody about it. And that is tremendously important. As you read all the after-action reports of what's happened throughout the country, somebody knowing something and comfortable telling somebody about it is one of the most important initiatives that you could have. And your students express that they would do that. Building maintenance, you don't have new school buildings. but the maintenance of the buildings was really outstanding, especially when you look at the age of the buildings and the upkeep, and we don't usually see that. The buildings deteriorate, they take a beating. The upkeep was excellent in all your buildings. We saw a lot of good things. Schools, the CCTV, the camera system is excellent. It's monitored by the high school, your school resource officer program. You have a management program of visitors. You have some excellent plans on missing child. You have good technology that's looking at things behind the scene. All these comprise the importance of keeping students and staff safe. So when we look at things, we really look at all hazards. So what's the first thing? How early we can recognize something's going wrong. And not just the horrific event, a missing child, a chemical spill, a smoky room. All those are equally important to notice it's happening and to do something about it. So you have technology that does that. We have teacher training that does that, staff training that does that, emergency plans and procedures that make us better. The next thing is how fast we can communicate to everybody what they need to do, lock down, shelter in place, or evacuate. So that is part of training as well as technology. Do we have the technology that we can quickly tell everybody, lock down, shelter in place, or evacuate? And the last thing is getting the police or emergency responders, fire and EMS, to the school. But not just to the school. It's fine if they show at the front door at the high school, but if they need to find the LMC and they're not familiar with the building, because it could be other police departments inside West Orange, could be Montclair, Essex County, you have mapping that helps them find the exact location much quicker than schools that don't have that mapping. So we looked at some of the things, and you're going to see you have some best practices, and we noted in the report. And the bottom of each page also gives a standard that we teased out from either regulatory compliance, best practice, or an after-action report from an event that occurred. West Orange Pre-K maintains closed doors at all times. That's really a recommendation, that teachers may not be able to get to a door quickly. If you look at this room alone, if we announce lockdown right now and somebody had to run to that door, it's a long way to travel to lock that door and secure this room. So what the pre-K does, they keep their doors locked all the time. And we're going to make some other recommendations about that. The other part is shades on windows like that to prevent somebody from looking in. You already use that. When you leave, you'll see you already have straps on these doors. It makes the lockdown much quicker rather than needing a complete key. I can lock the door just by pulling that strap. And the last thing is we see tape in some of your rooms. In Liberty, they put tape on the floor so teachers understand the concept of hard corner. The hard corner is where I could hide when I'm in lockdown. So we look at a large room like this or a cafeteria. Very difficult for somebody to run and lock multiple doors during the lockdown. So what we recommend, and this technology has come down in price, is with a single button from the main office of the security resource officer in the school or the security officer you have. If I push that button, it locks the multiple doors in a room like this, so nobody has to run towards the door. And we provided some companies that do that, and I understand that we're looking at that right now. It's also a recommendation from the 2018 Homeland Security Report as a way to keep schools safer by this automated technology that locks doors. So if you look right now at the high school, you really have vestibules in most of your schools. That's two sets of doors that I have to enter to get into the school. The best security now is to have both of those doors locked. I get vetted through one door, and then I get vetted through the second door. What that prevents is somebody from trying to piggyback behind me or bum rush that door. And with a little bit more technology, you could achieve that. We provided that as a recommendation. It wasn't very expensive because you already had some of the technology in place, so we can close that loophole and really make that a safe access point for the schools. So the other part of access control is vetting the people, that I have a good view. So when we ask the secretary, receptionist, or school resource officer, or security to look and decide who's coming in, we should give them a proper view to be able to assess that person, their demeanor, are they carrying anything, is anybody with them. So we recommended some upgrades to the camera system outside, as well as you do have visitor management system in some of your schools now. We recommended that be expanded to all the schools. Again, that's assessing somebody. If there are known risks, that we could stop them at the door before they get in. And that we train staff who allow access to the buildings. So training is an annual requirement. We recommend that you train all teachers and staff on Run, Hide, Fight. Run, Hide, Fight is the recommended training by the Department of Education, Homeland Security of the United States, Homeland Security of New Jersey, the State Police, FEMA, Ready.gov. It's options-based. We were just contracted the training for the whole Archdiocese of Newark school system, 1,200 teachers. We accomplished that in 1 week, and the feedback was outstanding. It's training teachers on behaviors to monitor, as well as how to quickly, logistically set up their classrooms so they can get to their door quickly and make sure the hard corner is accessible if they have to hide there with students. It's recommended by and mandatory that you train all teachers and staff annually by the Department of Education. So we are in the process of improving and upgrading your emergency management plan. It did exist, but there has been tremendous lessons learned the last couple of years from some of the events. We are about 80-85% completed with that. We should have it done in by early July, so be well prepared for the next school year. And that'll be best practice in all emergency management for the district. We also recommend that we do a rapid response guide. That's really a quick reference guide that has teachers' fingertips that tells them what to look for and what to do and how to report things that are concerning to them. And it is recommended by the New Jersey Department of Education. So these are the maps you have. They're state-of-the-art. Allows me to tell a police officer to go to room 202. He'll never find room 202. But if I tell that police officer, go to K3, anybody could find K3. So this exists, and the West Orange police officers have that on their computers, on their cell phones, to be able to quickly respond. It's a best practice. West Orange was one of the first police departments to do this in the state of New Jersey, and it's outstanding when you look at the importance of getting a police officer, firefighter, or an EMS the exact location where they're needed. Seconds matter, and this takes those seconds off the table. Best practice. So school resource officer program, which you have, is not just about a police officer in the school or a gun in the school. It's much more than that, and you are doing it much more than that. You have a nationally recognized program. It's a police officer that's a resource to students and teachers and staff, that's a mentor to students, that's a role model, that engages teachers and staff and students in discussions, and is a confidential informant to be able to then express problems and pass those problems on. It's an excellent program. We highly recommend it, and you are engaged in it and doing a best practice. So a threat assessment team. You do have an active threat assessment team, and that, again, a child in crisis doesn't mean that child's going to be an active shooter, but it certainly means they could be suicidal, they could take drugs, they could run away from home, they could be losing their ability to be educated. So it's identifying that child in crisis and recovering them so they could be a worthwhile student again and recover their own initiative. One of the major recommendations from the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas report was to mandate that when teachers or others observe behaviors that are concerning, they're mandated to report it to the principal. It takes the option out of it, because this is important, that an English teacher may know something and think, oh, that's just a one-time thing. But a gym teacher and a Spanish teacher and another teacher may know something about that student. And if we get into a central repository, it's much easier to identify a student in crisis. So we spoke to your students. They reported that they would freely talk about and report students who were in crisis. There are recommendations, though, that some students, not all students want to do that, but they may do that with an anonymous reporting system. So that's just a phone or an internet page that allows students to report another student in crisis, that they saw a Facebook post or they saw something bad about that student, that they were going to harm themselves. 3 of the big companies, P3 Campus is a company being used in all of Morris County to do this. WeTip is recommended by New Jersey Student Insurance Group. A lot of schools are using that system. And Safe to Tell is recommended by the Sandy Hook Parents Group, that all have a large amount of information on preventing tragedies in schools. So Sandy Hook Promise, New Jersey Department of Education identified their training and provided $1 million worth of grant money to allow them to come in and use this training program for students. And it's really anti-bullying, recognizing students in crisis, and it really becomes a core source. Again, we saw a very good climate here, but it is something to consider spreading it out to all students, and they have an opportunity to engage with that Say to Hello program. The parent drop box, we find that schools using this found that it's a parent pleaser, that instead of a parent having to buzz, come in, get vetted, and leave whatever their child left behind, that a small a container in the vestibule, allows the parent to run inside, leave the students' lunch, homework, lacrosse stick, and run back to their car and get to work on time. So it improves the parent's ability to leave something quickly, but it also keeps that front door locked more often than if we had to let people come and go. So it's just an opportunity to keep our schools safer. And you actually are doing this in a couple of your schools. So a safety committee is a committee that meets quarterly and tracks some of the things we're talking about, as well as fire safety issues, all the drills. The superintendent has to sign off on an assurance form every year that they've done certain things. This is a good way to keep it tracked and keep it going and provide timely communication to make sure we're doing everything that we say we're supposed to do, to track issues, to meet with the police. And again, every time something happens in another district, we examine that and see how can we prevent it here or do something better about it here in West Orange. Again, I want to leave you with the thought that we've done hundreds of schools. We found that your schools are doing a great job. We are already engaged in doing some things a little better from what we've seen, and we think that's outstanding. And again, the relationship between the police and the school district couldn't be better. And that really is the keystone. That and your students' attitude about reporting and the climate that they expect here. And thank you for your time. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to address them.
All right, what have we started on this week? Michelle? Ms. Markinger, would you like to start this week?
I just want to commend our West Orange Police Department and Fire Department because I know we do have a great relationship with them. A lot of those folks that are involved are former West Orange High School students, so I think that helps with the relationship as well. I'm excited to hear about the emergency management plan. I think that's something that we've been asking for with Snowmageddon. So I think it's great that we're working on that and putting that together. And I'm glad to hear that we're one of the best practice schools systems. So, round of applause to us for being on top of things, and great job by everyone. So I'm looking forward to hearing some of the updates and recommendations.
Thank you. We'll be back.
Thank you. Mr. Robertson?
I agree with Cheryl. Our police department and fire department have been amazing partners, and it does help that they have relationships already, some lifelong within the schools. And I want to thank you all for doing an amazing, just fantastic, really thorough, in-depth job, and for being so accessible and working with us on this. A couple questions that aren't really addressed in the presentation. About 21.5% of the kids in our town are special needs, and many of them on the autism spectrum, 18.5% in our schools. We've discussed this a little bit with you, but how can we do a better job in terms of addressing during a crisis period, whether it's a kid is going to be sensitive to sound, or the frenzy of an emergency drill or a real emergency that can cause fear, confusion, disorientation to a child. What are some things we should be doing to address that from a training standpoint and contingency standpoint?
That's a great question. The state of New Jersey is seeing a big uptick in children on the spectrum. So in your emergency management plan, there'll actually be a section of that. One of the most important things is training teachers on the reaction of students to strobes, sound. Some school districts are looking at changing the strobe on the fire signal. That the strobe that's constant right now sometimes causes a seizure. There's a different strobe that would actually not cause a seizure that's been found to be effective. The blaring of an alarm could be changed to a voice-activated announcement. Fire, evacuate. That's not as scary. One of the most important things is what we already saw in your school. Some of your schools have doors that are alarmed. That if somebody opened them during the day inappropriately, such as a child leaving, somebody being a runner, would alert somebody that child's leaving. The other part is, and this will be in your plan, where are the nearest areas that that child may go to that's dangerous? Children on the spectrum are drawn to bodies of water, high traffic areas, construction sites. If we know a child's missing, especially if they're on the spectrum, we need to get our people and the police out to those sites near the schools as quickly as possible. It's a race, and we can't afford to lose that race. So you'll see in your plan there'll be a number of things, and in our training that we do, there is a number of initiatives that we tell teachers to be astute about and understand that paying attention. Again, a student may hide during a fire alarm while everybody's evacuating. The need for those teachers to pay extra attention to those students really becomes important to everybody's safety.
Okay. Second, tonight is an example of where we have multiple activities going on, not only with our own folks, but we have kids from other schools. We have little ballerinas running around. We have basketball teams from other places. And, you know, it's wonderful that our schools are really the centers for our communities as well as for activities for the kids in school. How can we do a better job in after hours of still maintaining that kind of openness and flow and yet having a level of security so that somebody can't hide out in a room or hide a weapon or something like that and be able to retrieve it at another point?
So that's a great question. And a lot of schools struggle with that because schools are community buildings, and a lot of people use them. Again, we didn't discuss the whole report tonight, but in the report, there is some discussion about being able to cordon off some of the school, either with gates or the simplicity of an infrared alarm, and a sign that if you go past a certain point, the alarm will sound. So that way people know if I'm using the gym, I should just be able to go to the gym, the bathrooms, and the exit door. But if I go beyond that point, the alarm will sound, the custodian will come, as well as the people running the event. So it's a dissuader on people using other areas of the building where they shouldn't be, as well as making sure that the classroom doors that aren't in use during those times are locked is another good deterrent.
Okay, thank you. Also, and this actually gets into another area that you're not really addressing, and maybe this is a question better for Mrs. DeMendez and Mr. Calavano. But hand in hand with the physical security is the cybersecurity. You know, school systems have been held for ransomware. Cybersecurity also interfaces with physical security. You can use a cyber attack to shut down some elements of physical security because they're computer controlled. I'm not clear where we are, and I apologize if I've forgotten an update in terms of the work with Homeland Security and the cybersecurity audit, which will eventually mesh with us.
So we're in the process of cybersecurity audits at different degrees. The one for Homeland Security, we've applied, we're on their wait list. There are responses that we've received, so we're definitely in process, and those will work together. And then just, Mr. Brunner, just and a reminder to the public, we would not tonight reveal all of the elements of the security plan or
Definitely
ask
not.
very
Yeah.
detailed questions. Just a reminder, because then that would put us...
That's a good point. You know,
It
what we
puts us
talked
at
about
risk,
tonight is
yeah.
things that are not vulnerabilities that would put the students or staff in danger. So we did not discuss a lot of the report. Most of it we discussed in private with the board and with the principal and John and some of the police department. What we presented tonight was really not security-sensitive issues.
Right. That's it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your work.
Ms. Mordecai?
Sure. I'll add to the thanks. Thank you for your very thorough work. It did take a while, but, you know, some of that also is us and the RFP process. You mentioned during your presentation that you met with students. Did you also meet with faculty?
Yes, we did. While we were walking to school, we had an opportunity to talk to a number of faculty in the rooms. We engaged them about how they would lock the door and communicate. So we did have an opportunity to have that discussion at all the schools.
Okay. You also mentioned trainings. And I know from going to a lot of the security conferences, we train the staff, staff, faculty, students. A lot of parents have been asking about what is the training for parents to make sure that they're cooperating with whatever our plan is so they don't rush into a building and disrupt whatever the process is happening.
So in conjunction with your emergency management plan should be a small 2 or 3 page document that goes to parents that explains how we're going to communicate, where your children could be accessed, and things of that nature. Now again, it may be we may not be able to tell you where you would meet the high school children if we evacuated the high school, but it would be how you would get that information via the website, via an automated phone call, via text message, or via email. So as long as you're comfortable with receiving that information during a crisis, because each crisis is different. Where we move people may depend on wind, maybe depend on parking availability or building access. So each crisis, students may be at a different location, but our ability to communicate with you is critically important and tell you where the children are when you need to reunite with them.
Okay. The threat assessment team, that's per school or for the entire district?
As per school, you have one in each school.
Okay. All right, those are all my questions. I don't want to overstep. I was actually surprised that you showed the map because that's sensitive as well.
Well, that's
Thank you.
pretty much out there, so.
Okay, thank you. And I'll add my thanks to the police department has been a great partner and the fire department over several years. You know, whenever we've updated our emergency plans and whenever we've had the SROs come in to talk to the board about what we're doing, you know, and how we can improve. So thank you to them as well.
Ms. Trigg-Scales.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Going last, I have very little to say other than to extend my appreciation as well to the police department and the fire department and to Stonegate. And to hear that we are doing as well and that we do have many, many best practices is very reassuring to us as a board. And it should be to our parents and staff as well. And I know that the emergency management plan, that's where all the details are. And so some of the questions that we have will be found there and not for the general public.
That's correct.
Okay, so
There'll
thank
be
you.
a lot of confidential information.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much to you and to the police department as well, and to everybody else in the district who worked on this. Briefly, members of the public, if you have questions only on this topic, just so that you don't have to then sit through our other presentations and academic things, if you have questions only on security that obviously aren't hypersensitive issues that you'd like to ask, you can come up now and do so. Otherwise, we will move on. All right, seeing none. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And just a quick update, the grants office in correlation with the township, Catherine Kapoor specifically helped us complete the COPS grant. Fantastic support from her office, and we did apply to a grant of almost $400,000. It's been submitted in order to fund the things that are recommended here in this proposal, so we'll expect to hear back soon and see just how much we've received.
Great.
Awesome.
Throughout the year, we've had various strategic plan goals to really begin to assess the different areas across the district. Although this was not a strategic plan goal, our two supervisors of ELA, Denise D. Martinez, Elementary K-5, and Elizabeth Veneziano, at the time, ELA 612, really decided together to take a look at ELA, take a look at some different areas, and they have completed their committee work along with a host of committee members within the ELA department. So tonight we're going to get an update on their review, some of their findings, some of their recommendations that have actually been put in place, and we'll hear what those items are. Before we do that, I just want to thank everybody. Thank you for all of your hard work, your commitment. I know the IMET wasn't easy, and going through all of the materials and really poring over the standards and making sure that we're looking at what we are offering our students well. So I'm going to invite Ms. Veneziano to the microphone and to Ms. D. Martinez to present with their committee.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Mendez, for that introduction. Again, my name is Liz Veneziano. I am the ELA supervisor for grades 6 through 12, currently the acting assistant superintendent, and along with me is Denise DeMartinez, the ELA supervisor for grades K-5. In January, we provided the board an update of the committee work to date, and so here we are at the end of the year to share our final outcomes that stem from our year-long work of the K-12 English Language Arts Evaluation Committee, and we hope to finish our presentation before the air goes off.
Good evening. Our committee is made up of a range of volunteer, elementary, middle, and high school teachers from general education, special ed, basic skills, and reading specialists to ensure representation of all schools, grade levels, and courses across the district. Also serving on the committee are building leaders along with social studies supervisors. Committee members presenting alongside with us this evening are elementary educators Stephanie Ross, Jennifer Sisman, Jennifer Bottarini, middle school teachers Maheen Ahmad, Arturo Rodriguez, and high school teacher Tonio Favetto. We would also like for committee members in attendance this evening to stand for recognition. Please stand. Thank you. The charge of the committee was to evaluate the K-12 ELA program in the areas of instructional materials, curriculum units, assessment, and student work in order to achieve a comprehensive and cohesive K-12 ELA program that ensures all students are meeting the expectations of the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. The main purpose of the K-12 ELA Evaluation Committee was to evaluate the district-provided instructional materials. To do this, the committee used the Instructional Materials Evaluation Tool, or IMET, developed by Student Achievement Partners. The founding partners formed the organization to address the need for practical, evidence-based support for teachers and school leaders making game-changing shifts to align their instructional materials, assessments, and practice to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards. Through the use of the IMET and additional evaluation tools provided by Student Achievement Partners, the committee evaluated district-provided instructional materials, curricular units, assessments, and student work for alignment to the shifts of the current standards. Those shifts are ensuring a range of text complexity in each grade level, student application and analysis of text evidence through the questions, tasks, and assignments provided, the building of knowledge through informational text, and foundational skills in grades K to 2. In addition to evaluating all of these components, the committee also audited current text provided in regards to diversity and variety of genre to ensure our curriculum include texts in which students can see themselves and texts in which students can learn about others through a variety of genres in each grade level. Tonight, our committee members will walk you through our process, share our findings and recommendations of the committee.
So just a quick walkthrough of the research-based tools that the committee used when looking at all of our instructional materials through the different lenses. So the IMET is designed to help educators determine whether or not instructional materials are aligned to the shifts and major features of the standards. The substantial shifts are regular practice with complex text and its academic language, reading, writing, and speaking grounded in evidence from text, both literary and informational, and building knowledge through content-rich nonfiction, and for our K through 2 grades only, explicit and systematic instruction and diagnostic support in foundational reading skills. The Quality Review Rubric, or EQUIP rubric, provides criteria to determine the quality and alignment of lessons and units to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards in order to identify exemplar units and models for teachers' use, provide constructive criteria-based feedback to our curriculum writers, and review existing instructional materials to determine what revisions are needed. The 612 committee members conducted a text audit to ensure diversity and variety of genre. The text audit evaluation tool was developed in-house based on teachingtolerance.org's Reading Diversity, a tool for selecting diverse text, to include evaluation of gender, race, and voice of authors and characters. We also audited our text to determine if they mirror the identities and experiences of our students, as well as provide windows into the identities and experience of people whose lives are different than those of our students' lives. In addition, committee members evaluated if the text worked towards the goals within the 4 domains of the anti-bias framework: identity, promoting a healthy self-concept and exploration of identity; diversity, fostering intergroup understanding; justice, raising awareness of prejudice and injustice; and action, motivating students to act by highlighting individual and collective struggles against injustice. Lastly, samples of student work were examined to measure assigned tasks, alignment of tasks to the standards, and for the student work itself. To understand the student to further our understanding of student understanding of the task, student proficiency with the requirements of the targeted standards, the depth of student understanding and reasoning ability, and the application of the scoring guidelines, rubrics related to the task to support an understanding of the student proficiency. So, over the course of the 18-19 school year, the committee met over 15 times, either in full-day workshops or in after-school work sessions, to complete this work. Each meeting included a specific focus, professional development, and learning about that focus to further strengthen our understanding before diving into the work itself. So now some elementary committee members will walk you through the process and the findings for the K-5 instructional materials and for the curriculum units.
The structure of the committee fluctuated over the course of our efforts, either working as one K-12 group or in smaller level groups when needed. Findings and recommendations will be presented in grade bands of K to 5, 6 to 8, and 9 to 12. To start, the K-5 members of the ELA Evaluation Committee examined the district materials and how they support the balanced literacy model. The K-5 committee examined the instructional materials used across grade levels based on text complexity, evidence, building knowledge, and foundational skills. The committee collectively gathered the strengths and gaps of the current instructional materials used in K-5. The area of foundational skills for K-2 was to examine the Foundations program. The committee found that the program builds for a strong and secure foundation to teach concepts fully and to help students become proficient readers and writers. Foundations provide students with the multiple opportunities to practice concepts, skills, and strategies. Lessons construct upon a student prior knowledge and past concepts integrated within the learning activities. Last year and this year, West Orange served as a model site for Nutley Public Schools as they implemented Foundations in kindergarten and level 1. Some of the findings include strengths such as a majority of texts represent range of text complexity appropriate for grade levels, appropriate read-aloud texts that are slightly above grade level, allowing exposure to rich language and vocabulary, and texts that allow opportunities to build upon background knowledge. Some gaps include inconsistent use of mentor text per unit, more modifications and scaffolds for special education and English language learners, and more multiple copies of text for partner reading, book clubs, and small group instruction as needed. Findings and teacher feedback found inconsistency in materials across elementary schools and the need for supplemental reading and writing materials to better support existing balanced literacy program. The K-3 ELA curriculum was in a revision process while the committee members examined resources that would best support our existing balanced literacy program. The units of study was recommended as an instructional resource to be included in the revised units. The revised curriculum units reference specific mentor texts, mini lessons, and teaching points in the units of study. The committee took the lead to examine the Lucy Calkins Reading and Writing Units of Study. Lucy is the founding director of the Reading and Writing Project at Teachers College, Columbia University. Her mission of the Reading and Writing Project is to help young learners become avid and skilled readers, writers, and inquirers. After examining the reading and writing units of study, text selections in the units of study met the qualitative and quantitative measures. Materials provide a range of complexity across grade levels, and higher level text complexity allows for exposure to rich language and vocabulary to foster critical thinking through writing, language, and speaking. In addition to the strengths of the unit of study, such as texts that represent a varied selection of genres to teach specific content and build knowledge and opportunities to regularly engage in volume of independent reading. Considerations over the course of next year include all mentor texts will be used for direct instruction and modeling across schools and collaboration. PD will be provided for teachers to plan and debrief on units. When examining the units of study, the committee found strengths such as opportunities to engage students in evidence-based discussions around grade-level topics and standards, frequent opportunities for evidence-based discussions and writing, and for students to regularly engage in texts of their own choosing. Considerations were to ensure that prompts and questions aligned to mentor texts, elicit evidence through discussion and writing, and the infusion of additional nonfiction selections around mentor texts support content, knowledge, and academic vocabulary.
The committee used the EQUIP quality review rubric to examine the K-5 curriculum units. The committee found strengths such as all units are aligned to the New Jersey student learning standards, opportunities for student engagement, and fosters student mastery of the content and greater student accountability and independence. Some gaps the committee came across were inconsistency in grammar skills per unit and lack of consistent mentored texts per unit of study. The integration of units of study into the ELA curriculum will provide teachers the support needed to strengthen instruction in balanced literacy. Teachers will have access to quality and research-based instructional materials across district in all schools, grade levels, and classrooms, and consistent integration of mentor texts in each unit for direct instruction and modeling. For the 2019-20 school year, the committee plans to review, evaluate, and integrate instructional resources into the balanced literacy model that support grammar, language, and vocabulary. This will ensure consistent, explicit instruction across district in all schools, grade levels, and classrooms so that all students demonstrate command of the conventions of standard English grammar and usage when writing or speaking.
The findings and teacher feedback found inconsistency in knowledge and understanding of current literacy practices and the need for adequate professional development to gain deeper mastery of the approaches and instructional practices in the existing balanced literacy program. Full-day professional development opportunities led by a balanced literacy consultant trained directly under Lucy Calkins was extended to all K-5 general education, special education, BSI, ESL, and reading specialists in both reading and writing. Professional development was provided to support an understanding of the pillars of reading and the components of balanced literacy, further understanding of read aloud with accountable talk, and mini lessons in reading and writing workshop. This was accomplished through demonstration lessons, clearer understanding of the characteristics of leveled texts and expectations for small group instruction, and practical teaching strategies to implement within the literacy block for diverse learners. Next steps for professional development in grades K-5 will include smaller participant groups of teachers, half-day professional development sessions rather than full day, focus on conferencing with students in reading and writing workshop, utilizing rubrics effectively to target specific needs in writing, support of the units of study in the form of demonstration lessons at site schools, push-in coaching facilitated by reading specialists to further support instruction in components of balanced literacy.
All right, we will now walk through the evaluation process conducted by the middle and high school committee members. First, middle school and high school members of the ELA Evaluation Committee examined district materials and how they support and align to the ELA New Jersey Student Learning Standards. In examining middle school core texts, committee members found the following. The committee examined anchor texts to ensure they are worthy of students' time and attention. Texts are of quality, are rigorous, contain rich academic language, and meet appropriate complexity criteria for each grade. In doing this, the committee found a variety of texts are included within the curriculum, including a mix of modern and traditional texts from different time periods, and the texts used are representative of a variety of genres. Middle school texts utilized include complex text structures and depict exceptional craft and vocabulary for analysis, discussion, and emulation. When reading, students are asked to consider different viewpoints from their own. Gaps include that the level of complexity of the text is on the lower end of the grade level band and that some texts are outdated. When examining materials to ensure they provide opportunities for rich and rigorous evidence-based discussions and writing about text to build strong literacy skills, the committee found that sample questions and writing prompts evaluated align with the specific reading and writing standards about text evidence. Gaps included a need for more opportunities for students to elicit and articulate evidence via speaking and listening. High school texts were found to be complex. The majority of texts met qualitative and quantitative criteria for complexity and increasing complexity as the years progress. Texts also display notable craft, such as layered and complex themes, symbolism, author's milieu, depth of characters, and multiple lenses through which a reader can interpret and read the text. Collections of short stories at each grade level provide concrete teaching paradigms of specific elements of literature such as setting, mood, characterization, plot, irony, and figurative language. Identified gaps include outdated titles, and students can have difficulty relating to some characters and situations. The committee also noted that more differentiation between honors and college prep texts in the area of complexity are needed. Regarding text evidence, the tasks, assignments, and questions are varied, text-dependent, and require students to use text evidence to support their rationale. Prompts and questions provide students with frequent opportunities for evidence-based discussions and writing to support careful analysis, well-defended claims, and analytical thinking required by the standards at each grade level. A gap identified was that some performance-based assessments are text-specific and should be more text-dependent to allow for more teacher and student flexibility and choice of text read in each unit. For non-negotiable 3, building knowledge, the middle school and high school committee members determined strengths and gaps as a 6 to 12 team. When examining texts to ensure they build knowledge systematically through reading, writing, speaking and listening, and language study, the committee found that the performance-based assessments require students to demonstrate knowledge of topic, content, and concept. There are repetitions of research and its process through group and supported settings to develop the expertise needed to conduct research independently. Independent reading allows opportunities for students to connect to the topic, content, and concepts explored, and nonfiction paired texts are utilized to build knowledge of content and concept currently being studied. An identified gap is a need for a resource to support direct instruction of a systematic approach to vocabulary and grammar.
So after we examined the instructional materials, we moved on to the quality review rubric for lessons and units. And the middle school and high school teams use this to kind of analyze and evaluate the way that the curriculum units for each core grade level developed and were created. So at the middle school and the high school levels, we were looking for a couple of things within the curriculum units. One of those was to identify exemplars and models for teachers' use. To number 2, provide constructive criteria-based feedback to curriculum writers. And 3, to review existing instructional materials to determine what revisions are needed. Technical difficulties, 1 second. Okay, so evaluation of the middle school curriculum units found that the units actually aligned very well to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards, and that they also reflect the depth to which students have to be assessed. Instructional supports were provided to ensure that all students have multiple opportunities to engage with texts of appropriate complexity for their grade level. Units were designed to cultivate student engagement and to foster student mastery of the content. Current and more diverse texts have been incorporated over the past 3 years. Performance-based assessments are authentic and thorough. The learning plan in each unit includes clear and explicit purposes for instruction, and it also holds students accountable for independent reading. Some of the gaps that were found within the committee were that there was a need to infuse more informational and literary text within each unit to create a stronger balance of genre. This includes more digital text and also additional text for complexity and relevancy. Additionally, a more organized and consistent way to deliver instruction of vocabulary and grammar is needed. And lastly, there needs to be more of a balance of on-demand process writing and shorter text/projects to ensure that students can write for all audiences. When examining and evaluating the high school curriculum units, current curriculum units for all core courses align to the New Jersey Student Learning Standards and their correlating shifts. Curriculum units provide instructional guidance and depth of rigor for teachers, and the scope and sequence provides teachers guidance on pacing over the course of the year. All units include instructional supports for special education students as well as ELL students. Some of the gaps included that some of the performance-based assessments, they need to incorporate more authentic, more real-world experiences as well as vary in product. And a consideration stemming from our findings was that there was a need to strengthen literacy across content area curriculum.
Everyone. My name is Tony Opavetta. I'm a high school teacher here to talk to you about text audit, because who doesn't love a good audit? Everybody okay back there, even in the cheap seats? You're all right? Okay, good, because it's been a long night. I know attention spans wander after about 8 minutes, and that was like 45 minutes ago, so get right to it. Hello. Okay, so, sorry. So we looked at our core text, meaning the big ticket items that we teach at each grade level, to try to see whether or not those texts were still relevant and valuable to our students. So as you can see, the areas that we looked at, I won't read the whole list to you. You can see for yourself, you know, how old are they? What type of story is it? You know, what are they, how are different ethnicities and races, genders, all these other areas, how are they represented, right? And so also the domains of the anti-bias framework are these stories that will help students to address and identify areas of bias so as to discuss them and talk about them and hopefully prevent them. So that was really what the meat of that part of our exploration dealt with. So what we found here, I know this may come as a shock to you, but many of our texts skewed towards dead white men. Okay, not all. We did have some diversity in there, but we of course are looking to try to make our text that we share with our students reflect more diversity. And the two areas that we were looking to do that were to create. Sometimes we wanted the text that we study to be a window where the students could examine a life that is different from their own, but then we also want to provide enough opportunity for students to have a mirror where they could see somebody who was experiencing something and experiencing the world as they understood it. Within that, we also had to try to come up with texts that were intellectually rigorous, that were the kind of text that would provide a strong foundation for college and for beyond, that would foster a love of reading. We had to become aware of the fact that students consume literature differently now than maybe when I was in school. That's when, Mark Twain was still a new release. But, so we wanted to try, what, even audience and oil painting? That was a joke. That's as good as it gets. This is a presentation at the board. Is this thing on? All right, anyway. So, sorry, Liz, I apologize in advance, but I'm apologizing again. So, I think, part of this is because I forgot my glasses, so all these script notes that I have here, I can't actually read. So I had to improvise a little bit. Sorry, again. So the next steps, where are we going? Well, now that we've identified some of the areas of strengths and weaknesses, we want to try to continue to build on those strengths, continue to bring in traditional texts from the traditional canon, as well as try to bring in texts that are newer and maybe that have been overlooked before because they may not be part of the traditional canon, to expand that definition so that students can have a variety of authors, of characters, of settings, of situations that can not only, like we said, not only provide a window into worlds other than theirs, but also sometimes provide a mirror, because that's really where a lot of people get benefit and joy out of literature, is reading things that they can relate to, that they can really help them maybe understand themselves a little bit better. So we are looking at trying to bring in more of those kinds of text, and also to look at other ways we can bring in ways for students to interact with literature. Maybe more ebooks, maybe more audiobooks, other kinds of ways to incorporate technology to make the reading experience something more relatable for students and again, more reflective of their experiences. I think I got them all. Okay. Thanks, everybody.
After examining the instructional materials against criteria outlined in each tool and findings, the committee developed recommendations based on the findings and then prioritized them into a comprehensive plan. The plan is directly aligned and focused on moving forward in the area of instructional materials and curriculum. This plan will be embedded into the goals and initiatives of the ELA program. This year, year one, teams of teachers at the K-3 level worked over the course of the year to revise the existing curriculum to the Lucy Calkins reading and writing units of study. General Ed, Special Ed, BSI, ESL, and reading specialists were provided professional development by our ELA consultant on the components of balanced literacy, pillars of reading, and types of writing. Demo lessons were provided at all grade levels. K-3 teachers were provided a half-day in-service to walk through newly revised curriculum and the units of study. A professional development plan is in the process of being developed to support all teachers in the units of study K to 5. The newly revised middle school curriculum was implemented over the course of this year. The revised curriculum includes transfer goals and a performance-based assessment to measure student understanding and transfer at the end of each unit. Teams of special education teachers just completed the differentiation for each of the 6 to 8 curriculum units. Also, additional titles were added to increase student choice and provide more of a range of authors, genres, and current and relevant topics and issues. High school teams of teachers revised performance-based assessments after a year of implementation to make them more authentic, technology-based, and provide more of a variety in the final student product. Year 2. In Year 2, the committee recommends to revise grades 4 to 5 curriculum to align with the units of study, develop horizontal and vertical articulation to collaboratively plan lessons and units, develop a coaching schedule with reading specialists to further support teachers with instruction, gather feedback from teachers on the units of study and their additional needs, develop a partnership with library media specialists to continue to expand classroom libraries to broaden choice and variety for students, and provide professional development for teachers to assist them in unpacking the units of study. In Year 3, the committee recommends to develop and present literacy nights for parents and guardians to build a stronger homeschool literacy connection, add Creole and Spanish independent reading books in grades 2 to 5 to further support our English language learners, expand a coaching schedule to begin to identify best practice classrooms in each school, and to continue to expand classroom libraries, and finally, continue to support teachers in using mentor texts to lift the level of student work. Finally, in year 4, the committee recommends to develop differentiated professional development based on teacher needs, continue to expand best practice classrooms in each school through instructional rounds and lab sites, continue to expand classroom libraries, and finally provide support to teachers in using interactive writing and other components of balanced literacy to scaffold writing skills.
All right, so the committee's recommendations for English Language Arts grades 6 through 12 include for year 2, from 2019 to 2020, the committee recommends to examine the middle school curriculum units to ensure cohesive flow of instruction and genre and to resequence if needed. Additionally, they also recommend to implement 7th and 8th grade book club units throughout the school year rather than as a standalone unit. In partnership with library media specialists and student input, the committee recommends to build additional complex literary and informational text into identified units to include more current and diverse authors, relatable characters, contemporary issues, and digital text to increase student engagement. To examine and reorganize text used in honor and college prep courses to ensure ample differentiation in titles and complexity. To complete the revision of high school performance-based assessments to ensure authentic tasks that provide students a variety in product. To work with other departments to further infuse reading and writing across content areas. Professional development during this year will include a focus on selecting complex and diverse texts and teaching struggling readers. Next year, pending approval, the committee will begin its partnership with Drew University's National Writing Project. A cohort of teachers will work directly with Drew professors in further developing writing instruction and assessment. In year 3, we will continue to build middle school classroom libraries to expand student choice and variety, continue to build additional complex literary and informational texts into identified units, and to work together on thematic approaches to reading and writing, and strengthen our understanding in teaching diverse texts and facilitate critical conversations with our students. Additionally, during this year, we will begin our second cohort with Drew University and their partnership with the National Writing Project. During year 4, between 2021 to 2022, we will revise the core curriculum to have a more robust thematic approach where students explore and examine themes through reading a balance of genres that examine each domain of the anti-bias framework within each unit. Lastly, during this year, we will provide professional development for all curriculum writers focused on understanding the Understanding by Design curriculum design model, and to continue the partnership with Drew University and the National Writing Project.
So for the further development throughout the district K-12 and to strengthen that program, in year 2, we're going to look to study effective approaches to language instruction and then try to review, evaluate, and implement instructional resources that will integrate grammar instruction into the curriculum, because we found that that's one of the areas that we really want to try to improve is how we're teaching grammar. We're also going to look at resources that will help support word study and vocabulary growth for all of our students, K to 12. And then as we expand into years 3 and 4, we're going to try to support and monitor the use of these instructional resources that integrate not using explicit language, but explicitly address grammar. Just seeing if you're awake, you're with me, just making sure, into our curriculum and develop and implement, again, word study and vocabulary in a scope and sequence from grades 3 through 12, so that there's a cohesive, logical approach to grammar and vocabulary that we'll be building into our curriculum. I think,
So after establishing this 3-year plan, we also found that there were some other areas that we really wanted to kind of explore. And some of those areas that we found were, the first bullet point up there, we wanted to focus on establishing some kind of elementary, middle school, high school writing mentors program. Another example of this is to further develop the West Orange High School freshman research orientation to include a continuation of student workshops in grades 10 to 12. Expand the West Orange High School Mountaineer Writing Center by training select high school students to assist teachers and work with peers on their writing. To evaluate high school courses and electives to ensure that student interest and relevance is there. To implement in-house field trips to complement curriculum to ensure that all students have opportunity to expand their academic experiences. Additionally, we want to review and revise our approach to summer reading to increase student engagement and to encourage choice and to further build a literacy culture. To develop and conduct family outreach such as parent and student book clubs and also literacy nights. To develop an ELA parent resource site to strengthen the home and school connection. To develop stronger community partnerships such as with the West Orange Public Library or the Luna Stage. And finally, to develop a strong literary culture across the community, district, schools, and other content areas in the community.
So for our committee members, we cannot thank you enough for your hard work, commitment to the students, and their passion for the content, dedication to the West Orange School District, and their tremendous amount of hours spent in committee meetings and on your own time poring over the materials, curriculum, and texts. Liz and I extend our appreciation to each and every one of you. We hope that throughout this work, you found value and ownership within the process. We thank you.
Questions? We'll start with Ms. Merklinger again.
So in the interest of time, I'm going to hold off on asking any questions. I think this was very thorough, so I want to thank everyone that was on the committee, that participated, all the teachers, the staff. It's a lot of work, clearly. It's all here. So I commend you on that, and I appreciate the amount of time that you take out of your day and the extra time after school hours. That means a lot, and I'm glad our students are definitely benefiting from it. My son is not a big fan of ELA. He had Mr. Wack, and I was worried about how he was going to handle 8th grade honors, and Ms. Bush did a great job. So I want to thank everyone for their time in this. And, it's hard to identify, it's nice to see what you're doing right, but sometimes it's hard to identify what, where the gaps are. And I think that was really great that we're able to identify those, and we're going to have a plan to work on them, and I look forward to hearing what those are. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Robertson.
Okay. First of all, thank you for really, really thorough. I think this is the most comprehensive approach I've seen literally in years. One question, there were no parents on the committee. There were actually a lot of parents on the math committee, but there weren't any on this one.
So this was our first year. Much like the math committee, we'll continue the committee work throughout the next years as we accomplish our objectives, and we will bring parents on. This was just down and dirty looking at our instructional materials, and really we needed the teachers to work through that. Sometimes it was even hard for our administrators to kind of get in there because we really needed the teachers who are teaching the material. So as we move forward, when we're looking at perhaps adding text selections or what we can do to strengthen homeschool connection, that parent resource, things like that, we will then add parents to our committee.
Yeah, and I think the parent resource you've added in there is absolutely fantastic, and the idea of even the parent-student book clubs and that sort of, that's wonderful. That's great. Starting with K-5, understanding you're taking a balanced literacy approach, that's always been, or at least for the past several years, that's been the goal. is there, are you utilizing the Reader's Writers Workshop, or, so that is the program?
Yes.
Okay, all right. Because I know we have extensive level reading libraries, and
Yes.
that's absolutely wonderful.
Teachers have classroom libraries within their classroom, and also each school has guided reading libraries.
Excellent, excellent. Talk to me a little bit about for K-5, the mixture of, partly because of the standards, we have such a heavy emphasis on reading articles and short passages and short stories. Where's there going to be the mix of actual books, and then how much will be fiction versus nonfiction, understanding that there's a greater emphasis nowadays on fact-based as part of, particularly in regard to the text analysis and everything. So how many books do these kids expect to read, and how much fiction along with the nonfiction will be built into it? In K-5.
So kids are reading every single day in the Reader's Workshop, and they're reading informational, fictional, poetry, all types of genre in the Reading Workshop. However, how we built the curriculum was that there are fictional units throughout the 6 units, and we also have built in informational units that are also built within the curriculum. What we also did in the grade 3, being that they were a tested area, we have also, as part of the curriculum unit, where students are reading those short texts, either fiction or nonfiction.
Okay. Are we still utilizing for text analysis and comprehension things like Fontes and Pinnell, or as a tool in RazKids, and which was in conjunction?
Yes,
with that?
absolutely, we do. We do 3 times a year the Fontes and Pinnell benchmark assessment for K-5. And at any time, if a teacher feels that the student needs to be assessed, they can certainly go ahead and do that. Teachers also do utilize the RazKids, and if students do not have the technology at home to use it, they are certainly using it in the classroom, or teachers even have printed out the stories if needed.
That's wonderful. In addition to RazKids, which often delivers the content in almost a game-like format, right? Which is great for kids. What else are we doing in terms of integrating technology and technology tools, whether it's, I don't know, anything from avatars to things that are going to grab kids' imagination and really live more in their world?
So as the technology has just started to kind of arise in the elementary buildings, students are using the e-books, the EPIC books, things like that, where they're constantly trying to integrate digitally. And again, that will continue to rise as we have just, middle school and high school kind of got the technology before us, and now we're really trying to, build that and increase that as well.
Okay. Thank you. For 612, I'm sorry, more for K-5. How are we addressing the enrichment for some of the high flyers, for some of the high-performing students?
Okay, so in the classroom, based on our, we have MAP assessment, Fontes and Pinnell assessment, our progress monitoring within our small group instruction. That's where teachers differentiate their instruction, and that's where we pull in whether it's reading workshop or writing workshop. Kids are reading independently on their level, and then teachers are pulling in small group instruction so that the instruction is based on the needs of the students.
Okay, great. For 612, and I actually know a lot of it does occur 9 to 12 because my son was IH. For 6 to 8, though, while we're focusing a lot on text analysis, what are we doing in terms of literary analysis to help them really dissect a story and the characters and explore, metaphor and allegory and symbolism and really, understand what's the hero's journey archetype and other types of literary archetypes? What are we doing from a literary analysis standpoint?
So I would say that the majority of our work in ELA in the middle school is literary analysis. However, it's the beginnings of it. So archetypes specifically, we truly explore that at the 10th grade level. But beginning in 6th grade, beginning earlier, but we are analyzing the setting and its purpose, character development, how the plot affects the characters, changes in motifs and themes and symbolism. We do also have built-in literary analysis assessments where students will analyze the literature that they are reading for those deeper meanings, as well as comparing it to companion texts. So let's read, we just read this novel, we read this short story, this poem, or this informational text, and how does that further help you analyze the inner workings of the piece of literature just read?
As part of the balanced literacy approach and understanding that Mr. Favetta, when he used to hang out with Samuel Clemens, he still writes a lot in his old age. He's doing very well. Are our kids also going to be indulging in creative writing? I found, personally, that was wonderful for me in middle school. Are they going to be writing poetry? Are they going to be writing short stories as part of that balanced literacy approach?
We do have, so we write to all three of the required standards. The writing types, one of them is narrative, so students do engage in short stories, writing fantasy, writing poetry. So we do have that embedded in all of the core courses, I would say K through 12, as well as, in addition, our creative writing elective at the high school, which is taught by Mr. Favetta, as well as other members of the department who are published authors as well. So we have creative writing specifically for that, but within our core courses, we do have time for narrative and short story. And Mrs. Sullivan, one of our committee members here, our 9th grade teacher, she just had 3 of her students be commended and recognized and actually won for their short stories written within her English 9 class.
Fantastic, fantastic. How are we addressing, first of all, I'm ecstatic that you're going to have the book clubs throughout the year. I'm a huge fan there, so you already grabbed my attention. Okay.
That was our plan, Mr. Robinson.
Thank you. I know that was there just for me. It was great. So as we look at implementing our book clubs year-round, what is the mix of, once again, fiction versus nonfiction, and how are we addressing pacing? Certainly by adding book clubs year-round, we should be increasing the number of books kids read by 2 to 4 books a year, right? But in general, how are you approaching pacing, and how are you approaching the balance of fiction versus nonfiction?
We're going to sit down as grade level teams, and we're going to look at our current curriculum units, and we're going to see how we can expand that, where we can expand it, and when. Our book clubs were originally literature-based, but as we are adding new titles, we are adding informational text as well. We have a historical fiction book club as well in 6th grade, so we need to work together as a team to find how we will do that strategically so that it creates a cohesive flow for the students, as well as still allows the teachers to be able to cover the curriculum that they are required to cover by the end of the year. So we will be identifying where within, whether it's in between units, or how we can run it in alongside our current units.
Okay. In terms of rigor and the complexity of the works that kids read, I was looking through the book list, and overall, I'm totally bought into it. I think it's wonderful. I do wonder, though, there's some cases where I wonder how much freedom the teachers will have within the book list. And I say that because there's some books here like, I think it was To Kill a Mockingbird was in 10th grade. My son, with the support of Mr. Bridge, actually read it in 8th grade, and it made for quite a lively classroom discussion, especially as the N word came up, and how do we address that, and what was the significance of the relationship between the races in this town, and how does that relate to today? All sorts of great exploration. If a teacher or working with the kid or working with the parent and the kid wants to explore something that's outside of the boundaries of this, will they have the freedom and support to do that?
Teachers do have the freedom. Our teachers work very well together collaboratively and with me, and we've had many teachers that will say, I want to try this, or for example, Ms. Robinson, who's also a member of our committee, she jumped when The Hate U Give came out.
Yeah.
And she just said, can I try this with my 9th graders next year? And so as long as we have, that, just so we're all aware of what we're reading, but teachers do have the ability to experiment and explore.
Yeah, I'm not as worried about the high school I feel like the high school programs, just based upon my experience and the kids that I know in the program, have been really challenging and have a diverse literature. I'm also wondering, but I was more worried about middle school.
We've had that in the middle school as well, specifically like through book club. They've added more, I would say, edgier or works that will have a call for social justice and action.
Good. I'm all for increasing the diversity in our literature, and I want to see kids, reading Things Fall Apart by Achebe, or reading Native Son, and bringing in this new Indian, East Indian literature that's come out that's amazing, talking about the experience in America. But in the process, as we diversify, I notice terms like, well, is this relevant or is it outdated? And there I start to get, when the term outdated gets in there, I get a little concerned. Does that mean like, Moby Dick or Billy Budd or Great Expectations will all of a sudden become outdated?
No.
What does that mean? And how do you defining relevancy? Given that we have a range of literature and we want to be able to touch upon different cultural experiences, which is beautiful, how are you defining what's relevant or what's outdated?
Well, number one, I think when we move to next year, one of the things that we really want to do is we want to survey our students and really get their input and their feedback about the things that we currently read and things that they would like to see read. But I think also it's maybe our approach needs to change in that we still can read the classics, we still should read the classics and works of the canon, but it's how we present them. Or are we presenting one-sided stories? Is The Great Gatsby the only definition of the American dream? And it's not. So it's the way in which we frame these texts with informational texts, with more current texts, and also things that are happening within our current society. So we can still look at The Great Gatsby, but we can look at more contemporary stories of immigration that is very relevant to our students and our population, and it also will then make The Great Gatsby more relevant. And going back to your literary analysis, that's where students can really dig in and they can really compare how the American dream is presented in multiple texts.
Or looking at Romeo and Juliet and its manifestation in the West Side Story or something else. But yeah, that's great. I just wanted to make sure that we're not kind of throwing out good things while we're bringing in
No, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah. That's about it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate everything you're doing.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Ms. Mordecai.
Thank you. A lot of questions were asked already, so I'll just piggyback. In looking at your committee member structure, for special ed, I see somebody from grade 3 to 5, 7, and then 9. I didn't see anybody higher than the 9th grade. I didn't see anybody lower than the 3rd grade. Given the fact that we now test for dyslexia earlier, shouldn't there be somebody on here, grade 1, grade 2, or
Good point.
no, special ed?
Oh,
Special ed, not general ed.
We also have Jen Bondarini, who was one of our presenters tonight. She represents K through 2 basic skills.
Okay.
She is one of our interventionists at Washington, and so she works with all of those students within that grade level band, as well as the special education teachers closely.
Okay, I was looking for somebody K to 2 or pre-K to 2 with the special ed cert. Okay, that works. Also, Mr. Favetta, you're not that old. I don't care what Mark says. But in talking about interesting kids, what about inviting authors? I know they do it at the high school from time to time, but it's not embedded on a regular basis. And I know here in West Orange, we have quite a few authors. And I think there was someone who emailed us not too long ago, Dr. Rowland. She wrote Nora's Lollipop.
Yes, we purchased that book for the 7 elementary schools and provided it to the principals and counselors.
Cool. I hadn't heard that. That's great. So it's always good to look to your local authors here as well.
And that was a point to develop a stronger relationship with our library media specialists. Our library media specialists were invited to our committee meetings when we did our final presentations, as well as at our department meetings, because we wanted to, as well as Nancy Mullen, the supervisor because we do want to strengthen that partnership, because a lot of what happens in the library can be an overflow of what happens in ELA and vice versa. So we really want to work together more so than we do now, with them in bringing in author visits. They also have many, they work a lot with book vendors, and they have been schooled, if you will, in diversity and multicultural texts as they make their collections. So we want to work with them, and they can share their expertise as we move forward.
Great. On page 12, I see that one of the gaps you identified was modifications and scaffolding needed for special ed and English language learners, and I'm glad that gap was identified because I've been talking about that for years.
Yep.
And another thing that we've been talking about for years as a board is the inconsistency across grade levels. So I hope this year that this is, looked at better than we have in the past. No fault of yours, you both are fairly new. But I know from I got on the board how many years ago, we've been talking about consistency across all 7 elementary schools, vertical articulation, and here we are again. It's the same phrases, same buzzwords. I just hate to hear the same buzzwords. I think with every presentation, it's the same phrases and buzzwords. On page 40, you talked about basic skills and reading specialists, and I know that's a discussion we've been having as a board. How do you plan to use the basic skills and the reading specialists in resolving some of these gaps?
So the basic skills teachers will push into classrooms and provide that support for students that need the extra. Reading specialists will be pushing into classrooms to give that teacher support within, using the newly revised curriculum and the units of study. Okay. And also, as we mentioned in the presentation, the basic skills teachers and the reading specialists and all gen ed and special ed were provided the professional development along with next year as well.
Thank you for the parent resource side. I know that's always an issue, and I'm happy to see the book club all year round. That's all I have. Thank you.
Ms. Driggs-Scales.
Hi there. I am so impressed. This is a body of quality work. I served as vice president of the Essex County Roundtable on Curriculum something years ago. And West Orange has always been a standout with their level of professional development. The teachers are so well prepared. The teacher input in this curriculum, the committee work, again, I am extremely impressed, being a curriculum person myself, so I just wanted to start with that. Lucy Calkins, we're talking gold standard in balanced literacy. And so all of the K-5 teachers had 1 day of training under Lucy Calkins. Am I understanding that right?
They had 2 days, but it wasn't actually on the Lucy Calkins units of study. It was on the pillars of reading instruction, understanding the balanced literacy. The balanced literacy is not only reading and writing workshop, it's shared reading, it's read aloud with accountable talk, it's phonics. It's all that to make it so that kids can learn to read and understand what they're reading. And then the second PD the teachers were pulled out for was the types of writing and narrative writing, opinion, and whatnot. Again, it was an overview this year. Next year will look a lot different because the PD that will now support the curriculum, along with, now that we have the instructional resource to support that curriculum, with that PD, smaller groups of teachers at site schools.
So with the units of study
yes.
plus the PD.
Yes.
So we understood that that's what the teachers were asking for, to pull all of that together, balancing a literacy program.
That's right, because what was happening...
It's not easy.
Not at all.
It's not easy.
There's a lot of pieces to it, right? And what was happening was there was a lack of, so they were trying to pull from everywhere, which was really difficult to implement. So now having the units of study will certainly help as a resource. It's not the only resource. We also have Jennifer Saravallo's reading strategies, book writing strategies, but there's other resources that we do have. But this will really help because it's all outlined mini lessons and teaching points.
And this will also address the inconsistency across the
Absolutely,
schools.
because all 7 schools
Right.
have the resource.
All right. Okay, so I have a question. What does the academic support look like for struggling readers at the high school? Yes. Mhm.
So, right now, we have students who are in their ELA courses, and all of their reading, writing, speaking, listening instruction is there. We do have additional specific reading courses, Orton Gillingham and foundational reading for students way below level and for specific special education populations, where we have our high school special ed teachers who are also reading specialists work with very small groups of students, and that is worked within their schedule. As far as the mainstream ELA curriculum at the high school, each student each year must take their 4 years of English language arts, and the teachers need to provide that instruction within that course. We do have, as we worked in our committee work and our data teams as part of the analyzing the high school graduation rate, that committee implemented the educational action plan, where when teachers, first of all, our teachers are meeting with students morning, noon, and night, before school, during lunch, and after school. However, within the educational action plan, it's a documentation for the teacher, for the supervisor, for the school counselor that really documents what the student is struggling in, what interventions have been in place, how it was communicated, and when with the parents. And so that also provides documentation when and if that student is not showing growth with the interventions in place, and then moves forward to the IRNS committee.
Great. Another quick question. Do we have transition programs in the summer for students moving from, say, 5th grade to 6th, or
we do not
6th to 7th, 8th, or 8th to 9th?
We have from 8th to 9th grade, we have the Step Up program that's been in running for years now,
Okay.
and it is run by our English teachers, where students are identified in 8th grade that need that extra step up, if you will,
Right.
come in. A lot of times, teachers will work through their summer reading with them, as well as some additional work to kind of give them a jump start into that 9th grade year. That is what we have in place right now. We have talked, Denise and I, to Luke Quagliato in adding a literacy piece into the enrichment program. There's a wonderful program provided by Scholastic called Lit Camps, where it's actually like a summer book club. And so we've talked to him. There is not currently a literacy piece within the enrichment, so we want to start with that as well. And then we do need to increase our 5th through 6th. Perhaps we can have a step up from 5th to 6th if needed.
Yeah, I think that's something that the board may want to work with you on at some point, is that transition to middle school.
Yes.
Is a bear. We kind of know that. I see in 2020-2012, we're going to purchase books in Creole and Spanish. We don't have the money to do that for this coming school year.
Well, everything, if we had our druthers, everything would be for next year. But we did want to make sure that we spanned it over 3 years to make sure everything was manageable and that we could achieve and our goals were attainable. However, and we also want to make sure that everything that we're bringing on purchase-wise is budgeted for. So although that's a year 2 goal, things can easily be moved around if things are able to be done. So as Denise begins working diligently on the K-5 budget, I'm sure that we can work that in there if there
Maybe
are
we'll get
funds available.
donations or a grant, or
Well,
if
again-
anybody out there.
Again, partnering with our library media specialists, they are excellent in also helping us in providing, things through their budget, as well as they do a lot of programs which donors choose.
Okay, and I'm really happy to hear that we're going to get feedback from students, because that's so important to find out what works for them and what doesn't work. So again, I commend the committee and the work of all the teachers. You've done a phenomenal job.
Thank you very much, and thank you again to our committee members.
Mr. Robertson, you had one question that you'd neglected to ask
Real
before.
quick.
On roots.
Latin and Greek roots. And I know your father was a classics teacher, and we've talked about this. Some of the top performing school districts in the country are teaching Latin and Greek roots as part of helping the kids decipher words, as part of, in conjunction with vocabulary building. Is that part of our curriculum, or will it be?
Well, we will adhere to the roots in Latin and Greek that are within the standards, and we'll have to, when we look at finding our instructional resource, we're going to start with the standards and the research. We currently do use a Get to the Root program within the middle school. Arturo and Maheen particularly have a lot of work with that they have worked with their Edison teachers. And so that is part of language study. Will that be our only language study? No. Or a huge focus? No. Again, a balance of everything. We need to, again, go back to the standards and go back to the research and look at what is the most effective instructional practices.
Okay. Thanks.
I just want to thank everyone for their really hard work on this, and the everyday devotion to what you do in your craft. It really shows through work like this. Mr. Favetta in particular, if we could get maybe 60 to 90 seconds of you in each board presentation, I think that would be great. Two real quick questions. First, just for those who might not know, which I'll admit includes me, what's a mentor text? Because that comes up a lot, and it sounds important.
Denise can answer that.
So a mentor text is sort of like a core text, but in the elementary we call it the mentor text, and it's really where teachers use that to model different reading strategies and writing strategies. They use it as a read aloud, so it's used within units. And where, again, in the findings, the work that we did in the committee is that we found that the mentor texts were not consistent within the elementary schools and grade levels. So that's where we bumped it up, and we're on better direction.
Okay, great, gotcha. My other question is on grammar. More a curiosity than anything else. Are we teaching grammar now systematically? And to the extent that there's weakness, that it seems like there's weaknesses in that, is that carryover from like the whole language debates that I remember from years before I was involved in this, or is it something else? Or I'm just curious how we got there.
Okay, so for elementary, grammar is not taught in isolation. It's taught it's embedded. And teachers teach grammar through reading. As in the lower grades, they're doing shared reading. They're teaching that grammar as they're reading. In foundations, some grammar is taught in the program. Also in writing workshop, and they're teaching the process of writing. Grammar is embedded in many lessons. So it's not taught as an isolated skill. It's taught where it's embedded.
Okay, gotcha. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I've passed out the HIV report. Thank you, everyone. That was a fantastic, I can't even say it, fantastic job.
We're good.
Questions? All right. Closes superintendent's report.
Not much at all.
All right. Moving on, questions from the public on agenda items, on any agenda item. You can come up to the podium, give us your name, your address. You'll have 3 minutes on the clock. If you need some further feedback, there's a clipboard right there on the side where you can leave your name, and the superintendent will be able to get back to you.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Ross. I'm the reading specialist at Kelly Elementary School. The reading specialists have been cut by 1.6 positions for the 2019-20 school year. The .6 position has been taken out of her role, and the full-time position was a non-renewal. Currently, neither position has been replaced. We have given serious consideration to the cuts to our reading specialist department and the significant adverse impacts they will have on the elementary language arts programs. Contrary to the district's plan to make literacy a priority, we feel these cuts are detrimental for many reasons. After speaking to our expert literacy coach leader, Tom Marshall, regarding itinerant reading specialists, he emphasized that itinerant coaching cannot be done well. For those of you who don't know, Mr. Marshall is the expert that the Board of Education sent us to in order to develop the best practice for reading specialists. I repeat, the district sent us to learn from an expert who insists that reading specialists who are itinerants are not effective. His experience has taught him that coaching is primarily built on relationships and trust that is developed over time. According to Tom, best practice is for coaches to work in one building, coaching and providing Tier 3 intervention services. This is the exact opposite of what administration is proposing.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Diglio. I'm a reading specialist at Redwood School. Currently, our roles are multifaceted. We coach, we provide diagnostic services, and we provide direct instruction to the neediest readers. As coaches, we use our expertise in reading and writing to improve the instruction of our colleagues. As diagnosticians, we evaluate the literacy needs of our most needy students and work to determine the appropriate level of intervention in order to maximize their literacy progress. We provide direct instruction to the weakest readers, using current research-based practices to improve the reading and writing skills of the weakest students. As the reading experts, these particular students have always been provided with the benefits of interacting with the true reading experts. Under the proposal, no students will be exposed to our direct instruction, which is referred to as Tier 3 intervention. Without our Tier 3 interventions, we fear that many more students will be referred to the child study team and may ultimately be placed into special education.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Shari Ritter. I'm the reading specialist at Mount Pleasant School. To complicate matters even further, who will provide literacy services to students and teachers at St. Cloud and Gregory? How will 5 reading specialists provide services to students and teachers across 7 elementary schools? According to the experts that the district sent us to, and according to our own professional beliefs, an itinerant model does not make literacy a priority. It is unlikely to be as successful and compromises the services we provide to the schools, staff, and students to which we are currently assigned. In fact, we used to have an itinerant reading specialist which proved to be unsuccessful. Because the itinerant model was unsuccessful, we went back to having a resident reading specialist in each building. At the dawn of new curriculum and resource adoptions, we believe reverting back to the itinerant reading specialist model is a recipe for failure.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Wendy Giuliano. I'm the reading specialist at Washington School. The district just purchased very costly literacy resources. This is a substantial investment of taxpayer dollars and will risk being used as doorstops if reading specialist support is reduced. One of the board's current goals is to provide instructional supports and materials for the elementary ELA program. The proposed reduction in reading specialists flies in the face of this goal. The district is in the process of hiring a new superintendent and a K-5 ELA supervisor. Doesn't the board think it is wise to allow the new significant administrators to observe and evaluate the existing programs that are supported by both the elementary principals and staff, as well as the expert to whom the board sent us, before making wholesale changes that reduce the literacy instruction in our district?
Thank you.
Jennifer Sisman, reading specialist at Hazel Avenue Elementary. We assert that it is critically important for the district to maintain consistency and support in all elementary schools. Our reading specialists currently provide that consistency and support for all elementary students in West Orange. The proposed cuts will undermine that consistency and diminish literacy instruction. Lastly, we are very concerned because in our meeting with the acting superintendent, we were told that these cuts were strictly budgetary. She told us that we did not understand budgets. That might be true. We may not understand budgets, but we are reading specialists. We understand reading, we understand literacy, and we understand that these cuts will hurt our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Pilar, Kelly Elementary School. First of all, I wanted to commend the Literacy Committee for their very, very hard work, and also for the district's purchase for the resources for our district. I think it was a good decision that Ms. DeMendez was instrumental in the purchase of. And because of that, it's worthwhile to make sure that the rollout of these resources goes smoothly and is successfully implemented. And I'm here to support the surviving 5 reading specialists, because I really do believe that although the non-renew and the .6 reading specialists that are no longer in the budget were, to the principal's understanding, the positions were still necessary. We thought they were going to be replaced. We didn't understand that it was eliminated. That we do support building-based coaches, and that we feel that in order for a successful rollout of this new curriculum, that we do need our building-based coaches, and it's all about relationships and trust. And we are striving very hard for our reading program, so I would implore you to reconsider those cuts so that we can have a successful rollout of this program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Rachel Gordon, 8 Meeker Street. Just a couple things. I was really happy to hear that you are, close to the end of the superintendent search. But I just wanted to clarify, if the next official board meeting is July 22nd, do you have to, as a board, vote publicly for that to happen? And so would you have a special Board of Ed meeting vote and all of that? So that was a question I had. Secondly, I think, that was a very thorough presentation. Would have been good next time to maybe have things like what mentor text is for people who are not, in ELA. And I'm glad to hear that there's going to be parents on the ELA committee who hopefully, there are plenty of parents I know who are, who are expert readers and writers and all of that. I would love to see, especially in K through 5, a little more information for parents about what goes on in ELA, because usually what happens is my kid takes home his book bag and at the end of the year, and that's where I see all of the stuff. And if you're not a parent who can get into the school during the day, I know that you can see these great things that people have written, but if you're not a parent who can go into there, you don't get to see that on, so you don't get to see what's happening. So it would be great, I know that I don't want to make more work for the teachers, I really don't, but it would maybe somehow that they could convey what's going on, what they're studying, or what mentor text they're even doing, so you could talk about it with your kid, just something I know, because in the math they have the little home notes and stuff, and so that would be, because in 6 through 12, you can look on PowerSchool, and even if you have no idea what the assignment is, you could at least ask your kid, hey, what's this assignment? But you don't have as much. Anyway, last thing, glad to hear book clubs are going to be more than once a year for middle school, because I know that reading club, reading groups are a big part of the elementary school. How many do we know, like what's the ideal to have from like one unit to like reading 4 books in a book club for a year or 3? I mean, I don't know what's too ambitious. So just if we could have a number that's around. Thank you.
Good evening, Robin I. Surlitz, 22 Yale Terrace. First, I just want to say this was, the ELA presentation was such a great example of the experts in the field advancing our curriculum. So I want to thank all of the committee members for your hard work. There does seem a disconnect then between the development of our ELA curriculum and the proposed cuts to our valuable literary specialists. So perhaps someone can help me figure out that disconnect. For the committee, I do have a few questions. I didn't see any mention for elementary school for the book logs, which I would celebrate. I couldn't stand them as a parent. My children couldn't stand them as students. I don't know what's in store for them, but maybe we can move away from book logs, which to me seems to routinize the joy of reading. Number 2, the PBA's, performance-based assessments. Our dinner conversations have gone, as my children have aged, from the book logs, blah, to the PBA's, blah. But for the non-educators in the room, in our audience tonight, what are these? I mean, I know, but others may not. What is an example of making them more authentic? Because that I don't understand, and I would love to hear maybe a specific example of what that means. I would urge you to include parents in a committee moving forward. We have many parents in our community who are educators, who are authors, who are journalists, who I think would really improve and give some great insight. And finally, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Hoboken Middle School has a community book club. The students in Hoboken chose the book. It's Trevor Noah's Born a Crime. They right now have 115 families in Hoboken reading the book together, and wouldn't that be wonderful for West Orange? So thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Beezer, 82 Lawrence Avenue. That really was a fantastic presentation. As a non-educator, I have to admit, I understood very little of it. So actually, I was wondering about the book logs too and how that factors in. I think I missed the answer to the question about how many whole books the kids read, because that's something I've noticed with both of my kids starting in elementary school. I think they kind of lose sight of the fact that people do actually read a whole book from cover to cover. It's not just excerpts or a chapter. There's something that there's also a skill to sticking with it and following a narrative all the way through. Being a non-expert, actually, I had written down here, push-in coaching and reading specialists and coaching, and this is from different slides that I saw. And I actually didn't know about this proposal with the literary specialists until I came here tonight. And I was going to ask what was the plan to add more reading specialists to provide the coaching that is needed for the kids. And I really find it unbelievable to think that in our elementary schools, many of which have 500 students, there's not going to be a resident 1 reading specialist who's based in the school who can get to know the kids. I just can't understand how that can be the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further for agenda comment?
I'm just here to complain about the height of the podiums. Brad Kohlenstein, 24 Yale Terrace. I know that Mr. McNeil's transfer from Gregory is on the agenda tonight, and there's several things like that. There's transfers, and we're hearing sort of word of mouth of teachers that aren't coming back, and it's hard to get any information about that. So I know Mrs. Nyack and Mrs. McIntosh and Mrs. Matz, all not coming back, and it's sort of Gregory seems to be in a time of transition and without sort of information about what's going on. So I would sort of, before you approve Mr. McNeil's transfer, would be great to hear more about like what's happening and sort of the overall plan and why these folks are moving around. That's all.
Thank you. Anyone further for agenda comment? You can walk. It's okay.
I too, sorry, Jacqueline Hendy, 134 Walker Road. This gentleman who came up before me, the names that he mentioned are leaders in the Gregory School. And I'm very, very concerned that we are losing so many people in leadership positions. Mrs. McIntosh, Mrs. Nyack saved my son this year. I'm telling you from my heart, my son was in crisis, and she is kind and patient, and she saved him. And I'm very, very sad to see her go. Mr. McNeil is probably, and forgive me if I'm saying this, the only male of color in a leadership position in that school, in that entire school. And I believe that Gregory is one of the most diverse elementary schools in the district. And I hate to see him go. Mrs. Matz, goodness, I'm forgetting, but these are leaders in our school, and I feel like Gregory is in a crisis situation, and I'm very concerned to see all of these leaders leaving at once, and I'd like to know some more about what the plan is to make sure that our kids are properly supported during this very, very major transition of the people who they look to as the rocks and the foundation of this school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Susan Pasquale, 22 Overlook Avenue. I'm here tonight as a concerned parent of 3 children who have attended Gregory School and as a prior graduate of Gregory myself. I cannot believe that I sat on a hiring committee in the summer with Gregory parents and teachers to pick an assistant principal for a community that is dying for someone diverse. Then as soon as Mr. McNeil gets familiar to the community and the children and the parents like him, they move him to the middle school and replace him with someone from the high school. I don't know what the process is for vice principals. I guess no one has to interview. I want to know what's the reasoning for this, why you put Stephen Gregory, and if he has no experience in elementary school, and now not only is our principal, who has only been there for a year, has to train him from start to finish. You're also cutting classes, getting rid of the trailers, and cutting the reading specialist and not providing another one. I want to know who is making the decisions and why are these decisions being made. You are not clearly understanding and asking consideration from any input from the community. Mr. McNeil was a great addition to Gregory, and I'm asking the board to please hold off on moving Mr. McNeil out of Gregory.
Thank you. Anyone further on agenda items?
Stiff getting up here, sorry. Lisa Piscini-Asman. I'm an elementary physical education teacher at Gregory School. I've been teaching in West Orange for 30 years. And I'm listening to a lot of parents come up with concerns about Gregory School. Mrs. Stupignan is my 9th principal at Gregory School. She is the first black female principal that we've ever had in West Orange at the elementary level. Errol Scales was the first black male principal, and I loved working for Errol at Pleasantdale. I still call it Pleasantdale, I'm sorry, I know it's Kelly School. Mrs. Stupignan came into an environment where a lot of people had issues with the prior principals that were there. A climate and culture, unfortunately, was set. She came into the picture with a new vice principal, Mr. McNeil, also. But Mrs. Stupignan has tried to provide and make a professional environment for staff members. And like I said, this is my 9th principal. I've always worked closely with principals, because the different programs that I do at Gregory School, Turkey Trot, Field Day, different things, I have to work close. And also currently I'm the third in charge after McNeil with my principal cert that I have. There's been a lot of change, but the change that Mrs. Estupinian is making is change that she's making for the good of the order and hopefully with the best interest of the students in mind. Nobody likes change. I don't like change. I don't like when you come use my gymnasium for an assembly and I'm kicked out. I don't. So I could be just as tough as anybody else there. But change is difficult, and that's what we're hoping, is that with this change, a lot of teachers have been moved around. Some teachers have put in for voluntary transfers to move out of Gregory. Some have stated that there were better opportunities and they wanted to change on their own for the better. So again, there's a mix of a lot of things, but that's also personnel things that I'm not going to speak for any individual teacher at our school. But again, I'd like to say that, you know, Mrs. Estupinian with the night at the museum to celebrate Black history and the different things that she's done, she is trying to change the climate and culture at Gregory. But change takes time, and change is hard. But our interest should be for the best thing for the students. It's not always necessarily the best thing for the teachers, but working together with the community, you hope it all comes together. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone further? All right, seeing none. Ms. Mendes.
With regard to our reading specialists, we were able to meet last week, and it's one of two additional upcoming meetings to begin to really take a look at the reading specialist role in our district and how we will eventually begin to move toward the idea of literacy coaching, academic instructional coaching. Our budget did impact our reading specialists by 1.6. We have committed to really taking a look at this and how we would resolve with those budget cuts. And true to the commitment, we have identified alternate funding to reinstate the 1.6. And it will again be movement toward the coaching position. So it may look a little different, but we will have the position available in each building so that we can service the teachers primarily. We will also be working closely with the Basic Skills Department to move it toward an academic support model where we are addressing Tier 1, 2, and 3 through basic skills and shifting the primary responsibility of reading specialists to assessing program, assessing student needs, and in instances serving the most neediest students, but primarily to be the assessors, the experts, the trainers, so that we can leverage their capacity to train our teachers, especially our basic skills teachers. So we will be working closely together with a full staff and the basic skills department to, again, move to more contemporary best practices that will better service our students. With regard to the ELA questions, Ms. Veneziano, if we could together answer some of those questions. Do you want to come up? I will answer at least the beginning part of Mrs. Serlitz's question. Where is she? Hey there. For PBAs, performance-based assessments. Before, we were assessing students primarily with standardized assessments or, you know, the end of year park or the pre-posts. PBAs are now introduced right into the end of a unit. So at the end of every unit, we built in an assessment that should be authentic, that should be performance-based. What is the student doing to demonstrate understanding and the ability to transfer what they're learning in that unit, to another content area, to life, to college, in an authentic situation. You've asked for an example of that, so maybe Ms. Veneziano can give an example of what that would be in ELA.
So in ELA, I'm trying to find this up there. In ELA, we can very much kind of go to the traditional assessment of write an essay. And so although that is a lot of our work, we want to make sure that we're preparing students to write for all audiences, because as we move into our professional fields, I can't remember the last time I had to write an essay for my work, but I do have to write emails, I have to write, so writing for all types of audiences. So making them authentic and meaningful. So for example, one of our performance-based assessments is, in one of our English classes, is to write the West Orange School's Curriculum Council in recommending a book that you feel should be added into the curriculum. So more real-world, authentic, where students have a vested interest rather than just write an essay for the grade. So we are trying to move to authentic to make sure that they vary. It's not always heavy writing, to make sure they balance in speaking and being able to have a collegial conversation, things like that. I hope that makes sense. Okay, thank you.
Great. As the ladies have articulated, for future committee work, years 2 and on, we will invite our parents. So Ms. Gordon, Ms. Serlitz, I think that was also brought up by Ms. No, it wasn't. But we will certainly include them. Could you speak about book logs?
So book logs for independent reading, in order to provide student accountability, teachers may ask their students to keep book logs. Each teacher can approach that differently. One of the things that we want to make sure we're doing in the middle school is to make sure that we maintain student accountability, but we don't want to kill that love of reading with the book log. So we're looking at different kind of ways in which every day they come in and they have to perhaps have a conversation, they have a question that they're given that they need to answer that is more involved and really promotes their discussion about the book rather than just logging their pages. So the book logs or that student accountability can vary from classroom to classroom depending upon how the teacher wants to assess that. But we can and we will kind of address that, and that's one of the things that we wanted to talk about in middle school, to make sure there's a consistency, but it also doesn't feel like a punishment.
And about how many book clubs might we see in a year or in a unit?
So it can vary from year to year because book club is solely facilitated by students. And so they set, first of all, it depends on the length of the book. If it's a shorter book, they can go through a few rounds of book club. If it's a longer book, it might take them longer. And they set how many pages they're going to read and when they're going to discuss. So it really varies. And within our book club unit, students may be reading 3 or 4 books depending upon the books that they're choosing and how fast they work through them. So what we plan to do at the middle school level is really sit down together as grade levels and say, where does it fit in the curriculum? If we're putting something on our plate or more on our plate, is there anything that can come off? And then also, what is a goal for the first year? As the second year, what is going to be attainable for our students and balanced with the other work that they need to do. Our goal is for students to read and write more than teachers can keep up with, frankly. That's our whole goal in ELA. It's hard to put a number on it because we don't want to put a number on it and then feel if that student doesn't get there, they fail. If that teacher doesn't get there, they fail. Or just that we're running to make that quota. So we, right now, it can be 5 to 8 books per year, depending, but when we kind of move with our committee work to kind of build more consistency and sit down and make those book clubs more fluent throughout the year, we can certainly look at what is our goal, what's our minimum that we expect our students to read within the class and then outside of the class and on their own.
And could you talk to us about whole books and approximately how many whole books would a student read?
Well, I think we'd have to, like I said, go through that again as far as, because we read things as a class and then we would read things as a book club. And as we move book club in more consistently throughout the year, those numbers would change. So I think as we move towards that goal as grade levels, we can sit down and sketch those out. And then kind of to Ms. Gordon's point, we can communicate that home And I think at the elementary level, now that we have the units of study, as well as a further developed curriculum and consistency, we can kind of throw out to the teachers, this is our unit that we're working on, it's focusing on this genre, these are some things that we're reading, and these are some things you might want to explore at home to further explore the unit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
With regard to our staffing across our district and in specific schools, most of these are specifically personnel matters, so we do not discuss personnel. However, when it comes to transfers, some of those are voluntary. Teachers request them to look for different opportunities or different experiences. Some of them are involuntary. Our school leaders make those decisions, and we support them. With regard to the assistant principal, we have an opening in a different school. He has the 6-8 background experience. We believe it's a good fit. We also, there was a position that opened up there. We really consider all of our staffing very carefully, and we look to place our staffing across the district and ensure diversity across the district as a whole. When we're thinking about our new assistant principal, Mr. Olszewski has served in the district for 19 years as a supervisor of social studies for 4.5 years at the elementary, middle, and high school, which he serves across those grade levels and comes with that experience already. We are looking forward to all of our teams and how they will work together to make sure that the consistency and the strength is continued to be provided to all of our students. Again, we take all of our personnel decisions across the district as a whole very, very thoughtfully and considerably. They're discussed before those movements are made, and we understand the parent perspective and the stressor it could place on a building, but again, those decisions are not made lightly. Thank you.
Thank you. Just touching on a couple things. Ms. Gordon, somewhere, there you are. Yes, we would most likely, depending on the exact timing, we would do a special meeting, and it would be most likely here or somewhere else with a lot of space, so there could be a meet and greet, that sort of thing as well. It wouldn't be a weirdly timed one in central office or anything like that. I agree completely about the need for, I think, better communication on what, readers, writers, workshop looks like, because as parents, we don't really have insight into that. I know it's a weird comparison, but I have a friend who teaches kindergarten in another district, and she does an Instagram every year for the class, and it's kindergarten, so maybe it's different, but I have a good sense of what those kids are doing in their ELA, because they're making their names using, manipulables of some sort, right? They're those little silly string-like things, and they're doing letters to form other words and holding them up to the camera and stuff. So, it doesn't even necessarily have to be the equivalent of the everyday math letter at home. It can be something simpler like that just sort of a window into the classroom. I agree about the tyranny of book logs. I'm glad to hear that there's a possibility of more of, it almost sounds like a PBA version of book logs where they're, more authentic, that it's not just checking off and lying about, acknowledging the page numbers you read and, that you're actually answering questions. It's a little comprehension based. I think that makes a lot more sense. On personnel, I would completely echo what Ms. DeMendez said. Even when you really want us to, even when we really want to, we can't discuss personnel. But, they're never easy decisions, and I know they're tough to absorb as parents, and I just have to reassure and remind you that for every personnel decision the board makes, not necessarily the ones we're talking about tonight, but every time, the board sees a picture that's wider than the ones that we see as parents, and that can sometimes lead to decisions that seem counterintuitive, and I apologize for that. We're as open as we can be given the limitations that are placed on us, and we, as Ms. DeMendez says, we really take these decisions as seriously as I think you would expect us to. We're charged with considering the district as a whole and each one of the schools in it when we make these decisions, and we don't take any of them lightly at all. So that's all on that front. Next up, time for some motions. Oh, yes, the vote for superintendent would definitely be public. I'm sorry if I didn't jot that part down.
I'm sorry, I don't know that we voted for HIB.
Oh. No,
sorry, my bad.
We got it. Okay. Right. So she asked if we had any questions. We said we were good, and then we'll vote at the end. All right. We'll give folks a minute to shift, and then we'll do some motions.
I did have a question on HIB. I guess it was moving a little too fast. In looking at HIB, I know coming up soon you'll give us the end of the school year HIB report. How often is training across the district?
Training is mandated every year. We provide the mandated training. Also, we are looking at different opportunities for additional HIB training with our staff. Ms. Butler and I met earlier this year quite a few times to really discuss a plan for developing processes for training for HIB, including adopting Hipster to manage that process better. And so why don't we plan for a formal presentation, not at the next, but maybe at the following board meeting on our process and what we're thinking about.
Okay, thank you.
I'm wondering, and Sandra, after you brought that up, should the board undergo some HIB training? We sit often in hearings, and my personal belief is that there's not necessarily a consistency in understanding about HIB versus code of conduct.
I wonder if school boards does a version of that for school board
I'm
members.
not sure.
Yes,
I don't
they
know.
do.
Well, perhaps I think it'd be a good idea to
It'd be a
attend
good group
that.
one to do, yeah.
I think that's a great idea.
Whether Charlene comes or we go somewhere, that would definitely be worth looking at. Yep. Good idea. All right, it's policy time. I know.
Okay.
Party.
Take it away.
Let's not all jump and shout at the same time. So tonight we have 3 policies on first reading. Health and physical education policy 2422, student smoking, and student smoking, the regulations. We also have second reading policies tonight for HIB, and we spoke about that at the last meeting, HIB as well as the APSSD. And that second reading policy, at I guess a few minutes from now, the public can come up and ask any questions about the HIB policy as it's in second reading. But the first reading policy, you can ask questions at the second reading. That makes sense. And so the difference in the old HIB policy and this new one is, now this new HIB policy includes private school, which it didn't before.
Our students who are attending.
Yes, our students who are attending private school district. Okay. Any questions?
I just have a comment. I'm glad to see that we're actually updating our policy. Juuling and vaping has become somewhat of an epidemic now, so I'm glad to see that's being included and we're addressing it. So.
And you'll notice a regulation is here.
Yes, I
This is
mentioned
new.
it. Yep.
Okay.
I
So
mentioned that.
Which I'm elated about.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It's the first time
That
we're voting on
Amazing.
regulation
We're
in
getting
years.
Yeah.
regulations to go with our policy.
To go with the
In
policies.
years.
What a concept.
What a great idea.
Yes,
That's
so happy am I.
Nice. All right, Mr. Robertson, any comments on the policies?
None. Happy to see them.
Yeah. Ms. Mordecai?
May I have a motion, please?
For both?
Yes.
Wait, did we need
We
to
didn't
take
move it. We
comment before on the second reading ones, or are we doing first readings? What
We
are we
can
asking
make
for
a
motion on?
motion on the first reading of health and physical education and student smoking and student smoking regulation. We're doing them separately.
Okay.
Because one's first reading, one's second.
So I'll motion on the first reading.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Mrs. Merklinger?
Yes.
Mr. Robertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Trigg Scales?
Yes.
Vice President Mordecai?
Yes.
President Alper?
Yes.
Now
I'll
I'll
motion.
have a motion for the second reading for HIB.
I'll motion for the second reading. Oh,
Well,
sorry.
after you make the motion, you have discussion.
Oh, there you go.
Oh.
We haven't
Second?
done a policy in a while. I'll second.
Okay. Any questions on the second reading for HIB from the board or from the public? Okay, seeing none.
Mrs. Merklinger?
Yes.
Mr. Robertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Trigg Scales?
Yes.
Vice President Mordecai?
Yes.
President Alper?
Yes. All right. And that concludes the policy section of the evening. All right. Let's go to the papers. Personnel. May I have a motion for personnel items 1 through 9?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
Just on item number 6, I think John is going to look into, there's 2 middle school coaches that are listed as location of West Orange High School, but I believe it's supposed to say Roosevelt, so with that change, if that's correct.
Right,
if
I'll
that's
look at that.
correct.
Yep.
What was that, Ms. McClinger?
There's 2 coaches that are listed for middle school coaching. They're listed as location of West Orange High School, but I believe it should be Roosevelt. I happen to know the one's a baseball coach there, so.
Okay. So that one will be as amended then?
Yes.
All right.
Abstentions.
Okay. We can do this when we vote, I guess. Any other discussion? Mr. Calavano?
Mrs. Merklinger?
Yes.
Mr. Robertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Trigg Scales?
Yes.
Vice President Mordecai?
Yes, and I have a few abstentions on attachment number 2, Charlene Davis Williams, Patricia McArdle, and on the substitute list, attachment number 6, Deirdre Atherton Dyson, Dawn Edwards Reynolds, Dagmar Hobson, Ember Levine, Patricia Payne, Teresha Rue, Yvette Warren Hayes, Gloria Watkins, and Deborah Sims. And I'm abstaining from those because at some point in time, either Dagmar was my campaign manager, and a few of the others donated to my campaign.
And President Alper?
Yes. All right. May I now have a motion for curriculum and instruction numbers 1 through 12?
I'll make that motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, just wanted to say I'm very happy that we are doing the middle college program in conjunction with Fairleigh Dickinson. It's one I'd recommended to us and recommended to them to reach out to us.
Great.
It's a great opportunity for our kids to acquire college credits, and I'm happy we're engaging in that.
Fantastic. Anything else? All right. Mr. Calavano?
Mrs. Merklinger?
Yes.
Mr. Robertson?
Yes.
Mrs. Trigg Scales?
Yes.
Vice President Mordecai?
Yes, but I have a question that I'll follow up with you later. The trip destinations on attachment 15, I just want to make sure that there's equity across all 7 elementary schools when it comes to trips. Because it's not stated here exactly for what purpose. Typically, the trips are linked to a subject matter, whether it's science, and say that we go to the Liberty Science Center. Just want to make sure all the elementary schools are getting the same.
On that note, in terms of trip equity, I do want to make sure as well that when there is a fee associated with the trip, that we are ensuring that for kids who cannot afford it, that they have access to the trip, whether it's the end-of-year trip for 7th graders or 8th graders, as well as for the academically related trips.
Sure. Agreed.
She just said she.
I just said I agree.
Oh,
Because
sure.
that's very true. A lot of times we find out later on that, 50 to 100 kids didn't go on a trip or didn't participate in project graduation, and it's an economic thing for a lot of families, especially in these times,
So
want to make sure that we're sensitive.
Yeah, I just think with that, maybe that's a conversation to have with the council PTAs, because I believe the PTAs oversee the trips that are planned. I could be wrong on that, but I think that's part of what they look at.
They can, and it varies PTA by PTA, they can raise money, and they have to come to some sort of agreement with the principal, who also sits on that PTA, as to what should be done.
Understood.
But absolutely, that's part of the
Yeah.
conversation.
I just don't want to step on anyone's toes.
Right.
It is
Yeah.
a larger discussion to have, because some of the trips are based on the subject matter, so that's with the teacher. And project graduation and end-of-year trips are something different. Okay. With
And-
that, I vote yes.
And President Alper?
Yes. Okay. May I have a motion for finance, special services 1 through 7, and business office 1 through 27?
All motion.
May we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Ken, if you could just maybe explain, or Ebony, what unbudgeted is?
Let Ebony handle that one.
Sure. In short, unbudgeted generally means that a student has moved into the district and is coming with the need for special services.
Thank you.
Mr. Calavano?
Mrs. Merklinger,
Yes.
Mr. Robertson,
Yes.
Mrs. Trigg Scales,
Yes.
Vice President Mordecai,
Yes, but I have not received a response to my question that I asked offline. Essex Campus Academy, Essex Regional Educational Services Commission, that is an organization that we should be sitting on that board. There are many districts that's a part of that, and we send students there every year, and we've never sat on that board. So I'd like to make sure that there's representation on that organization.
Good point.
Thank you. My vote is yes.
President Alpert.
Yes. And last, may I have a motion for reports, items 1 through 3?
A motion.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All right, Mr. Calavano, let's vote.
Mrs. Merklinger,
Yes.
Mr. Robertson,
Yes.
Mrs. Trigg Scales,
Yes.
President Mordecai,
Yes.
President Alpert.
Yes. Okay, up next, petitions and hearings of citizens. Public comment on any topic at all. Again, you can come to the microphone, give us your name, your address. You'll have 3 minutes, and there's always the clipboard.
Hello, Jennifer Beezer, 82 Lawrence Avenue. I wanted to talk to you about dress codes. This comes up periodically. I'm sure you see on Facebook these debates flare up from time to time. My understanding from discussions that have happened at board meetings in the past is that there isn't a district-wide dress code, that the superintendent, Mr. Rutsky, had said it was a building issue, which left it up to the principal. And if I'm wrong, you'll tell me about that. But I think there are two issues here. One of them is what is the code, and the second is how is the code expressed to students and parents. Like Edison has this issue still, I believe, with the stretch pants and how long your shirt has to be. And I think there are some issues, people may differ about what they feel is important, what's appropriate, but, times try to shop for clothes that will meet that code in any store today. More often, I think the problem is that these are forms that get sent out over and over again. There's the dress code that's in the student handbook. Then there are other dress codes that come out, like the dress code for graduation, the dress code for the pool party. And I know these are forms that get recycled, and it's time to get the form out, they send it out, and it's something that was written 15 years ago, and it doesn't read right anymore. I actually spoke to Mr. Hush about our graduation, and that's exactly what he said. They got to get the form out. But the way it's expressed, it's targeted at mostly at girls.
Yes.
It's targeted at girls for dressing too sexy, for lack of a better word. And it's not about appropriateness of the occasion. And I wonder if leaving this up to the buildings it's too much work at this point to revisit all of these things. When I've done a little research on it, I'm seeing gender blind dress codes that don't specify clothing for boys or for girls. And I wonder if the board or the district or the superintendent, whoever would provide some kind of guidance and encouragement that all of the principals take a look at all these things before they go out. I didn't really need to get a note from Gregory School telling me that my daughter in 2nd grade shouldn't wear baby doll pajamas to the Super Bowl Monday thing. It's weird. And, not to put Miss Merklinger on the spot, she looks very lovely as always. Miss Merklinger's top would not be allowed at the Liberty graduation.
No cold shoulder.
And we need to look at this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Lauren Meehan. I live at 1 Susan Court here in West Orange, and I'm actually speaking on behalf of a fellow alum. My name is Melissa Wertheimer. I graduated 7th in my 2004 graduating class at West Orange High School and attended Edison, Pleasantdale. I realize that's now Kelly. I'm proud to say that my high school music teachers were Lewis Kelly and Ryan Crewer, middle school Jay Gitter, and elementary school Scott Tomlin and Mrs. Davidson. I've lived in Maryland since 2008, but I have kept up with some local news, including the deplorable decision on the table about reducing elementary school music to once a week. I could cite staggering statistics, list the endless accolades. Instead, I will share my own experiences as a successful musician who is a complete musical product of the West Orange Public Schools and who had far more than one music class per week in elementary school. Music has been and always will be my career. I am a music reference specialist at the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C., archivist of the Music Library Association, former adjunct flute professor at Howard Community College in Columbia, Maryland, former adjunct music appreciation and music history instructor at Johns Hopkins, and an active flautist and piccoloist in the Baltimore, D.C. region with orchestras and chamber ensembles. My Bachelor of Music degree is in flute from Ithaca, my Master of Music in piccolo from the Peabody Institute at Johns Hopkins. My second Master's in Library and Information Science from the University of Maryland has allowed me to actively participate in the preservation of our nation's musical heritage as an archivist. I chose the flute as my instrument in elementary school because of my sister Amy, West Orange High School class of '95 valedictorian, who played the flute throughout her years in the public schools. But before band instrument selection came recorder class, and the groundwork was laid in general music, the very course which the Board of Education is considering cutting by half. My most vivid memories of music class with Mrs. Davidson involve her accordion playing. I was always happy when her giant, shiny accordion came out of its case because my father played accordion at home. The moment would always come when she'd ask for a student to come up to the instrument and press one of the black chord buttons on the left-hand side of the instrument. Each chord meant we'd sing a different song as a group. I still remember the pure joy I felt from a class sing-along as the result of one student pressing one button. To a kindergarten student, that's magic. With my private flute students of elementary through adult ages in outreach concert performances and in workshops for Maryland Public Schools, I have always striven to share that spark I felt in elementary school with Mrs. Davidson. The joy of musical sounds has been my life ever since. How did I win a chair in the New Jersey All-State Wind Ensemble? How did I become the first student in the history of Ithaca College to win the School of Music Concerto competition on piccolo? How did I receive a Creative Baltimore Artist Grant from the City of Baltimore, Maryland? How did I attend the only school in the country with a graduate piccolo program? How did I present lecture recitals at conventions of the College Music Society, the National Flute Association, and the International Association for Women in Music? How did my chamber ensemble get a grant from Yamaha for outreach concerts and assisted living facilities? How do I have daily phone conversations with Pulitzer Prize-winning composers about the archiving, their websites, and our nation's music library? The superficial answer is hard work and talent. The real answer is that from the age of 5, I had music teachers who saw my passion for music and responded with knowledge, guidance, and enthusiasm. They were embedded in the local music community and were able to refer me to private instructors, and they were given the class time and professional resources to give me what I needed in order to get me where I am now. Musical success does not occur in a vacuum. It takes decades of seed germination and the processing and relearning of fundamentals that are taught in elementary school and reinforced throughout a life of music education. Do you feel a huge sense of civic pride when the West Orange High School Marching Band performs in the town's annual St. Patrick's Day Parade or when they yet again win major competitions? Guess what? That will happen less once West Orange High School elementary students have fundamental music time taken away from them. It won't happen immediately, but it will happen over time, and it will exert more pressure on the music teachers who encounter those students later in their education to fix problems that will be no one's fault but the Board of Education's. Like climate change, there will be so much cumulative damage that there will be no going back, only superficial prevention of future destruction. Does my letter seem pedantic and dramatic? I hope so. This sledgehammer approach seems to be all I can do to break the potential cement wall the West Orange Board of Education is about to build for its children. I hope you make the right decision. Sincerely, Melissa Wertheimer, Silver Spring, Maryland, West Orange High School 04, Edison 2000, Pleasantdale 97.
Thank you. That was impressive.
Sorry, I didn't want to abuse the time limit.
Did you breathe?
We received that in email, so I knew how long it was, and I knew that was going to happen, but
It's all that musical
It's
training
late.
from Mr. Perry. He taught me how to breathe.
thank you.
Jeremiah Salinas, 7 Crystal Ave. When you talk about cutting positions or eliminating positions due to budget restrictions, I believe that the public actually needs an explanation as to why, when a district received more money from the state this year and will receive more money the following year. In addition to that, are we hiring anyone for administration at all? Because it all seems that we're just shifting people around from building to building. Ms. Marti was moved from Redwood to go to Hazel, and now we have someone that's interim, Ms. Jackson is the interim vice principal there. So we're not hiring anyone, but we keep posting and posting positions and having people come in for interviews. I'm afraid that if we continue to wait and wait and wait and wait for the perfect candidate, we're never going to find one, and we're just continuing to lose people in that sense. In addition to that, when our school district every year goes through the same thing about cutting positions, how are we attracting more people? We had a diversity fair. How many of those people did we hire? How many of those people did we contact? How many of those people are still here? Or how many of those people were picked up by somebody else that could have been a huge benefit for our school district?
Thank you. Anyone further? All right, seeing none.
All right. Ms. Beezer, dress codes. So Ms. Mordecai has been a champion for revising the dress code. It's on the policy committee, her and Ms. Trigg Scales. They're working on it. It's coming up next. You know, we were waiting to adopt Strauss-Esme. We just did, and you're going to see a lot of policies coming now. And so dress code is definitely on the up next. All right, so the district will take a stance. Ms. Wertheimer, congratulations on all of your accomplishments. I'm sure that they are definitely the result of not only the education that you've received, but your hard work and your commitment to making music through excellence. We continue to work toward our program. We have some progress that we're making. We'll meet with our principals on Monday to work through those. It won't be 100%, but it'll certainly be movement toward not cutting half. Mr. Salinas, speaking to the public about why we make cuts, we did that extensively during our budget sessions. We went through all of our cuts, all of the reasons, all of the figures and the numbers. Regarding some of the statements, are we hiring? We are hiring for positions where we have vacancies. Are we hiring from without or from within? This is a great conversation piece that we've been discussing. Just as much as hiring the right people is important, so is retention, and so is growing our own staff. We have a cadre of excellent, skilled staff members right within the West Orange Public Schools who have demonstrated their ability and their strength as teachers and as paras, and they've moved up in different positions. And therefore, you will see some of the people who hold other positions now be promoted to the positions that they've been working toward. The legislation or law or code, whichever one it is, code requires us to post for positions, even though we may look within our staff, and that's when we would post internally. So some postings are internal so that we can promote from within. With regard to the acting, we went out for the Hazel interviews. We interviewed a host of candidates, and while we are not holding out or waiting for the perfect candidate, we are waiting for the right fit, for the best candidate, for the one that will best service our schools. We are adamant and clear that we do not want to, as a dear friend would say, pick the tallest of the short people. If it's not the right fit, if they do not meet the qualifications, if they're not what we're looking for, we will not hire. We will repost. We need the right people on the bus. Therefore, with this position, specifically Hazel, we did not find a viable candidate, and we appointed staff within our district who are capable, who have the experience to transition our schools until we find the right candidate. With regard to our diversity fair and how many people are we hiring to really address our initiatives for diversity. We've shifted already. We shared with the board some initial data. I can't recall the percentage. I want to say that do we know how much it is? We were closer to almost 50% of the new hires are people of color. So we're moving toward our diversity goals within this 1 year. I think that's great improvement. We certainly understand and value the importance of having staff across all levels, whether it's administration, teaching, all levels of our staff that represent our student body and our community. I think that answers all of those questions. And Ms. Mordecai will look to get the answer on Essex. I think the representation is a board member, right?
Yes.
So then it would have to come from the board who you'd want to represent for Essex.
Yes.
Okay?
East Orange, Livingston, Montclair, South Orange are members.
Yep.
And we have a significant spec ed population that goes there. So I think we should investigate why weren't we invited to be a part of the board, or maybe there should be a liaison that attends the meetings because they're open to the public.
I'll leave that to Mr. Alper.
Okay, Mr. Alper we
There
can
you go.
discuss that. But Mr. Mendez,
Punting.
going back to your answer to Mr. Salinas, can you tell us what that process looks like, the hiring process for the Hazel principal? We also have an HR director that's outstanding and an ELA supervisor.
Sure. So for the Hazel, we've reposted, and we are preparing now to start screening the resumes that have come in so that we can begin new interviews. With regard,
2 committees or one? Just
so
explain
we're doing,
for him how many rounds.
Sure. So
Is it
we are doing
0?
multiple committees. We have 3 rounds of committees. One of the committees is school-based, so that's parents, teachers. Another committee is content-based, so that's curriculum and instruction and leadership. And then the 3rd round would come to cabinet. That's our process with. And a board member sits on that committee, absolutely.
It's a very thorough search.
It is, definitely. With regard to the HR director, I am in the process of screening those resumes along with members of cabinet. We will set up interviews. However, those interviews will be set up so that the new superintendent can sit on that committee and inform that decision. With regard to the ELA supervisor, we've already had a first round of interviews. We had extremely strong candidates, and their second round is this week. We're also, because we didn't close the post, we wanted to allow it to continue to come in. We've had a new set of resumes, so while we're doing the second round with the first set of people, we will now do the first round with a new set of people. That way we just make sure we catch the person who's the right fit.
Yeah.
Great. Good.
Just a quick comment on
Thank
the
you.
dress code, and that's actually something it's just
Are we
been.
in board member reports now?
Huh? I'm sorry.
Are we in board member reports now? Ms. Murdoch hasn't gone yet.
No, it's just a comment
Go
on
ahead.
the dress code. Relax. It's been an issue for a long time, and it's been primarily an issue at Edison. My daughter and her fellow Girl Scouts had organized last year and made their voices heard, as did some girls who were on the in student government there. And for a while, it relaxed. All the things that were banned last year, she's able to wear at Liberty this year. They weren't even allowed to wear the cold shoulder tops. So, I mean, the stretch pants, all that, it's actually highly prejudicial. And it's something we need to really look at very soon. This has been coming up year after year after year. And it's a major issue, but it's mostly at Edison right now. Okay?
Well, personally, I may be a minority of one. I think, dress codes are largely a building concern, but I think the district attitude needs to be that it should be simple, in my view, that they have to be non-discriminatory, they have to be applied equally. There can't be any either explicit terminology or even inherent implications that the word distraction is being used that's, completely inappropriate to do. But, I think that they should be developed at the school level in consultation with the school community, which, you know, when my son was at Edison last year with your daughter, it seemed like that did happen through student council.
It happened and it relaxed for a second.
If that would stick, that
Yeah.
sort of thing would be the perfect, in my view, that would be the perfect process, that the kids worked it out with the administration and the parents were involved and they
Yeah.
came up with something that worked. So, you know,
Yeah.
hopefully, that's what I'd like to see, that we're encouraging buildings to do that and to regularly review them. Because I know from my friends with daughters that it's nearly impossible to buy shorts that are school legal now, especially if if you don't have like abnormally short arms.
Right, it's based on your arm length,
Right,
not on the
which
shorts,
is
yeah.
kind of a silly way to do it.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
But I think we have to also keep in mind that it also affects the boys as well, because at graduation, having to wear a jacket and tie when you're in a room that may or may not have air conditioning, there's some things.
Shorts,
so I think
yeah.
it's across the board. I don't think, yes, definitely for girls. I know my cheerleaders have mentioned it, that it's difficult to find, clothing that meets the description. But I think it's across the board. I think there's various, depending on the occasion and what it's for.
I suspect we mostly all want something that looks similar. We're just not all in the same place on exactly how we get there,
Well,
probably.
what you said, I think that's it, because it relaxed after they did that.
Yep. It worked.
Yeah.
All right, board member reports. Ms. Merklinger.
Sure.
Do
So
the good
first
news
off,
first.
what's that?
We'll do the good news first.
Oh, yeah. So first, I just want to wish a happy Father's Day. I know it was Sunday, but so I want to wish Mark and Ken a happy Father's Day, and to all of our parents out there, our dads, our stepdads, our uncles and grandparents, all those who help raise our children. I just wanted to, I know we had a moment of silence for CJ at the beginning of the board meeting, but I just want to recognize one amazing, amazing memorial service we had. It was truly touching to see so many people, alumni, our students, and I just want to commend Mr. Moore, Mr. Bly, Coach Zakella for working with Ebony and staff to get that pulled together in such a short amount of time, and for it to be such an incredible and amazing, it was just really moving to see so many folks from our community just outpouring of love for the Morgan family. So again, our hearts go out to them, and our support for their kids who are still in our school district. This morning I got to attend the Betty Madalena graduation and moving up ceremony, so congratulations to all our little youngsters. It's so nice to see them so little, because my son's so tall now, so you forget how little they are. But when I tell you, they sang those songs and they had their hand motions with them, it was really a lot of fun. So thank you for inviting me to that. I just want to also, congratulate all of our students from Roosevelt and Liberty that are going to be graduating on Thursday at the high school. That's going to be tough for me. I appreciate all my son's teachers that he's had from kindergarten through 8th grade and have made this experience so great for him. So best of luck to everyone who's graduating. West Orange High School is on Monday, so looking forward to that. It's the first time I get to participate, so that's exciting. And I just want to wish all of our students and our staff, faculty, a safe and fun summer with the last day of school coming up. And especially to our teachers and staff, I know the last day of school is not really the last day of school for you. I know that work goes on throughout the course of the entire summer, and planning and getting your rooms prepped and whatnot. So do take some time to yourself and relax, please. But have a great summer, everyone, and keep all of your achievements coming. It's so great to see all of our posts on Facebook and Instagram with just what amazing things our students are doing, where they're going to school, what clubs and activities they've been involved with at the high school. It's really great to see. So keep that coming, and good luck to everybody.
Thank you. Mr. Robertson.
Just to echo what Mrs. Merklinger said about, it was profoundly moving, and I think that the memorial for CJ was not only an incredible tribute to CJ's talent and greatness, but also to his family and to the West Orange community, that everybody came out. And I also went to his funeral at West Point, and that was yet another just really powerful ceremony, and hundreds of people from West Orange came. And what was interesting, one of the things that was interesting in it is his roommates and his coaches there spoke, and his coaches, one of whom had spoken here, spoke, but another one spoke as well, and his roommates spoke, and he gave kind of an insight into how these guys, when they're living together, really became like brothers, from the pranks they pull on each other to the really serious things they help each other to get through, because they all meet various struggles there. And it's not about not having struggle, it's about how you deal with it and how you get through it. And there were just some wonderful stories, and it was just a really moving and powerful day. Congratulations, on a different note, well, similar note in that they're kind of following in CJ's footsteps. Congratulations to the Arabito family. Gina becomes the first West Orange lady to graduate the Air Force Academy. And Valerie at the same time, who was on a ROTC scholarship after Air Force ROTC here, is on an ROTC scholarship at Penn State, will be an officer in the Air Force upon graduation. So congratulations to them, and just a really wonderful family. Last week was a week full of just celebration. I mean, in many ways. The athletic awards, Colin, like his brother CJ, became Male Athlete of the Year, and Maya, of course, is Female Athlete of the Year. But for the first time in history, 2 Male Athletes of the Year came from the same family. And Coach Sakella joked that 40% of our state placements came from the Morgan family. So he's trying to encourage the younger sisters to potentially wrestle as well. But it was just wonderful seeing Tyler Galantini up there, and who set our greatest golfer ever, Maya, our record-setting greatest women's basketball player ever, as well as being a great soccer player. We have so many phenomenal athletes. Davey Campbell, one of the tops all time in hockey scoring in the state, as well as our top. We really had a phenomenal class, and they're all also competitive as students. They're all very high-level students as well as athletes. Senior awards. I forget what the final number is, but I think it's close to $200,000 in scholarships from about 94,000 or over 100,000 from the scholarship fund, plus the other individual scholarships up there. And that's a story by itself, that there were, so many kids were able to benefit from, there were so many awards given up, but so many kids were able to benefit from the scholarships that night. And there were some kids, Arushi and Cecina could practically just have stood on the stage most of the night because they were winning so many awards and scholarships. But there are a number of kids like that, like Rebecca Dannemiller and several others, who were just really phenomenal. And I was happy that my son,
your son, got an award.
He got a couple. He got a couple of scholarships. He got the Dylan Pinnell one, which made him extremely happy, as well as the Mike Fabiano one. And so Patty was there to present that, and that was very nice. This week we also had, and I have to say, Mr. Santiago, Phil, congrats, because we had our website, our first website redevelopment team meeting. It was the most comprehensive, the most collaborative. We had administrators, teachers, parents, staff, and it was just he is a phenomenal process. This would be the best approach we've ever taken to our website development, and it'll ensure not only lots of input, but a high-quality product, I feel absolutely certain. And so kudos to Phil. We also had our first diversity committee meeting, and Ms. DeMendez did a fantastic job. The conversations that came from that were just really rich in terms of what does diversity mean, and what does inclusion mean, and just going through really the different cultural perspectives and experiential perspectives of teachers, administrators, parents. It was a really wonderful experience. He did a great job facilitating that, and I look for one of the things that coming out of that, as we now break them into separate committees, still like to see how all that feedback kind of redefines the original definitions for looking at it, because it took it out of the one-dimensional kind of, diversity's, we are a diverse community, but took it into the whole realm of a diversity practice, of a diversity philosophy, of how we're actually living and implementing diversity. And that was beautiful. Well done. Well done. Wanted to bring up a couple of questions and concerns. For our special education 18 to 21 program, back in March I mentioned to Ms. Mendez and to the board that two courageous gentlemen, Marcus Fonville and Elijah Evans, had talked about how for their graduation, there is no graduation ceremony for the 1821 program. They have to go pick up their diplomas. And that's rather unceremonious given a huge transition point in their lives and their accomplishments of what they fought through. These were two young men who were originally nonverbal. And now they're not only verbal, they're advocating, they're writing, they're speaking, they're engaging. And for them to be, they were told that things would be just done as usual this year. And I think that that's very sad because we should be celebrating in some form of graduation their achievements and transitions. And additionally, as we're going into summer, one of the things the board had not discussed, we've discussed in prior years, we didn't discuss it last year either, but last year was insane, but in prior years, what the summer reading and math curriculum would look like. Some years it was good, other years, I remember some kids getting basically a link to a giant textbook. Other years it was very focused by grade. And then of course for high school it's always been very focused because there was very specific assignments to prepare for their courses. But what does that look like and when will we see that? Okay. Second is Summer Institute. There are parents who've signed their kids up for courses at Newark Academy and Seton Hall Prep and other schools and MKA. And one of the things we were talking about earlier this year is that at the end of last year is that the Summer Institute would not only become this wonderful bridge that it's become for kids who needed help to graduate, but it was supposed to offer courses to get ahead. And people start planning their summer schedules in February, March, April. And there was no schedule published, no fees, how much is it going to cost if you live in district versus out of district. And so now, what are the opportunities? Where's the schedule? And I searched at the website, which, the website search is a challenge anyway, but nada. So what's happening with the Summer Institute? Is there still time to enroll for a class and what classes are being offered? And that actually created some challenges in terms of meeting course requirements for kids who did enroll at a Seton Hall, one case I know about Seton Hall Prep, where there was initially concern about the number of credits, a number of hours, instructional hours of the program, but if we're offering it ourselves, we don't have that worry. It makes it easier for the parents, the students, everybody, logistically as well as within our system for approvals. So if we could find out what's going on with the Summer Institute and if that schedule could be published and disseminated, if there's still time. Data question, we had an incredible curriculum update today on ELA. Where are we in terms of still being able to see the results of various assessments, whether it's MAP, Fonis and Bunnell, how we're doing, what that looks like. How do the MAP assessments pan out and what does that look like? What does our park data look like, even though I'm not a fan of park? Our assessment data. NJ Ask science for, I believe it's 5th and 8th grade now. It used to be 4th and 7th. Or is it 5th and 9th? I forget now. But, what does that look like and how are our kids doing in those assessments? When can we see some sort of presentation on, by grade, by school, and by cohort? Last, there was a budget question, a budget concern that came up that we should address at some point. It had to do with, in the budget, there was a cut for gym signage, but it wasn't signage. It's actually the banners that that laud our athletes in the Hall of Fame, our teams that have won titles for various things. Every year they have to be updated. So for this year, we had Maya, possibly our greatest female athlete of all time. Will she be up on the banner? So that budget was cut because the line item that we saw was, gym signage, but it's actually the athletic banners. So we'd have to address that. And that's it for me.
Thank you. Ms. Mordecai.
Yes, in the interest of time, I think everyone has said a lot of what we all want to say, but I just wanted to add my thanks to the community for your support of the Morgan family. West Orange is a huge family, and we truly did come together last week to support the Morgans and to celebrate CJ's life. I've known the Morgans for a number of years, and many of you know my older son is a volunteer wrestling coach, so he also coached both CJ and Colin. It was pretty tough week, and they have a pretty long road ahead of them. And I know a lot of PTA members have signed up this week to continue with the meal train to make sure that we continue to support them for going forward. I also attended the athletics and senior awards night, and that was very, very good, but I won't repeat everything Mr. Robertson just said, but it was a really wonderful night, and it really speaks to our programs here, how brilliant our kids are. Academics, sports, everything. They're all so well-rounded, and I'm very proud of them all. I just wanted to add something. I know I had asked at the high school before about the 18 to 21 program and the graduation and whatever ceremonies there are, and I was told that there was one. So if you could please clarify that for me, Mr. Mendez, I'd be interested in hearing about that as well. Data collection. I think you responded by email that you will be reviewing the data with us at the next meeting, so I look forward to that as well. No, not July 22nd. You said, when did you say, October?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
October?
Yes,
I'm not
October.
going to look at last year's.
This
It's
is
October.
This is what we will have. We can begin. We are beginning to receive our MAP and our F&P scores back. We can analyze those data, and we can provide some type of reporting on our formative. Last year's standardized assessment data was pulled off of the agenda twice by the board. We posted it online, so it's been available to the public as it was ready for presentation. When we spoke, Ms. Mordecai or Mr. Alper, I don't think that a public presentation of last year's data today or at this point would be beneficial. It would be confusing because we're waiting for this year's data to come within a month. So when we receive this year's standardized data, we have 30 to 60 days to present, which could be September or October. So with regard to formative data, absolutely, we're now receiving that data because the end of year data, they're just finished testing. We can analyze the formative data, provide a report on that, and once we receive the standardized data, then September or October, depending when the state releases it over the summer, then we can plan on that, and I believe that would be clearer for our parents.
Okay.
Thank you.
That's great.
And one last thing I want to add, I just want to say congratulations to our track and field team. They were very, very successful over the last couple of days down at Nationals. They came back with lots and lots of ribbons, lots of awards. So very proud of them,
Awesome.
And they were very successful in raising a lot of the funding for Nationals. We found out this year that apparently because the track and field season is over, technically the district cannot fund Nationals. And so there was a little snafu at the end, and totally sorry how that all came about. But next year, of course, I'm sure the track and field team will start fundraising early, and we'll do everything in our power to support you individually. I'm speaking for myself. I did contribute to your GoFundMe, and hopefully the community will step up as they always do.
Ms. Trigg-Scales?
I first need to mention that I should have abstained from the business portion where I'm being reimbursed for travel. So I will correct that. And I wrote this statement, so I'm going to read it because it's really from the heart, and I just want to share it. So 2 weeks ago, the board had their parade of honors, and it was such a proud moment for us all. And shortly thereafter, we had the sports awards program, and then just days later, we learned of the tragic news of Christopher Morgan's passing. And so it's been a roller coaster of emotions. I never had the benefit of meeting CJ, but at his memorial, I got to know what a wonderful human being he was. I also looked around the room that night and saw in living and loving color why the Reader's Digest named West Orange the nicest place to live. There are a lot of nice people in West Orange. Folks who were born and raised here, folks who've been here for a long time, folks who just got here. And so I think I learned that night that the Morgans have only been here for 8 years. Is that correct?
Yep.
And so it seems as if the Morgans fell in love with West Orange, and West Orange fell in love with the Morgans. And so CJ has definitely left a legacy of love here in West Orange. And it's my personal hope that we can keep his legacy alive and well and continue to love on each other. And so I attended the West Orange African American Heritage Organization's Men Who Cook, and 3 of our seniors received the Thomas Holcomb Senior Scholarship Awards for their essays. I also attended the Gregory's Strawberry Festival, and that was a phenomenal day. It didn't rain. It was a Saturday. One of the few Saturdays it did not rain, and it was well attended, and the kids had a ball. I had a ball watching the kids. That bungee jumping thing was the highlight, and of course the strawberries. The senior awards night, I had an opportunity to be there as well. And I just kind of saw that as one more jewel in the high school's crown. Awards were presented to the senior class and the student council. I'm so sorry our liaisons aren't here tonight to congratulate them. The principal's awards for both scholastic achievement and service, department awards, the president's award for educational excellence. There were military awards, local scholarship awards, and of course the West Orange Scholarship Fund Awards. And then we met the salutatorian and the valedictorian, and it was just another glorious event. And then today, with Ms. Merklinger, that was the cherry on the cake at Betty Madalena Early Learning Center's Moving Up ceremony. Those children are just absolutely precious. And just watching the parents and the families so excited and so proud. And our little graduates marched into pomp and circumstance. They were wearing their little caps, and they were all wearing tie-dye T-shirts that they had made as a family project. And it was a surprise to the families because they didn't know that that their children would be wearing them today. So that was just another really special moment. Lots of special moments here in West Orange.
All right. Thank you very much. I think everyone covered everything I was going to say. So with that, our next meeting is scheduled to be held here at the high school, July 22nd, 8 p.m. We'll let you know if there's something before that. And with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second, everyone?
Second.
Yeah. Have a good night.